now. I would like to call the Whatcom County Council meeting for April 21st, 2020 to order. Please call the roll.
Red Browne.
Here.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Tyler Byrd. Tyler Byrd. Todd Donovan.
Here.
Ben Ellenboss.
Here.
Carol Frazee.
Here.
Kathy Kershner.
Here.
Okay, let the record show that all council members are present. We would start with the executive report. Executive Sidhu, do you have anything for us?
Good afternoon, Council. As promised, I have a synopsis of the 2020 budget for the remaining 8 months. As well, we have sent you several documents which hopefully you have glanced through or analyzed. And I would like to request that if you can hold your questions to the end, that would be very helpful. I'm proud of the extraordinary accomplishments made by the organization in response to the COVID-19 emergency. In this unprecedented times, we have met the challenge of stay home, stay healthy, while providing essential government services. Our staff has demonstrated great flexibility and understanding, both in taking on new responsibilities to respond to the emergency and in adapting to work remotely. This is an incredible period of uncertainty. We all have concerns about our health, families, and the economy and our community, and may have loved ones employed within non-essential sectors of the labor force. This creates even greater uncertainty, not knowing when they will earn their next paycheck. These are very challenging times, and it is important to acknowledge that. We, the county government, have a plan of action. Our organization will continue to prioritize the emergency response to COVID-19 pandemic. While the economy idles, we are immediately implementing measures designed to decrease our operating costs. Our objectives are to prepare our organization to weather the financial impacts of this emergency, keep our organization intact, cohesive, and resume expected operations that serve our community. Our immediate actions are: number one, a selective hiring freeze. Number two, department direction to delay general fund contracts which are not related to life safety matters pending further analysis. Review all expenditure with the objective for reducing supply purchases by 10%, reducing non-grant funded contracts and all other discretionary expenditures by 5%. Negotiate with our bargaining units to address the impacts of current economic conditions on county operations. Our current projections are based on sheltering in place for April and May, followed by a period of reduced economic activity with gradual improvement throughout the year. Our focus is on cash flow. Ideally, we would like to maintain a minimum cash balance of $8 million, which is approximately 1 month's expenditures. We anticipate our property tax collection rate will drop from 98.7% to 95%. We anticipate sales tax will be 75% of the 2019 revenue. Most other revenues we expect to be 75 to 80% of 2019. This truly is an unprecedented time. Our projections will need to be adjusted monthly as additional information becomes available. We project the general fund cash balance to peak at almost $18 million in May, up from $11 million in March. We project the general fund cash balance will gradually decrease to a low of $8.3 million in September. We will receive the second half property taxes in October, and cash balance will increase to $16.2 million. Our cash balance will gradually decrease the rest of the year. We anticipate ending the year with a general fund cash balance of approximately $11.2 million compared to $19.2 million at end of 2019. Over the next few weeks, we will be preparing for Whatcom County's upcoming biennial budget. The first step will be preparing the capital improvement list. This is an important exercise as we need to be prepared for the eventual stimulus funding that will help fuel our economy when normal business resumes. Also, we anticipate developing a 2021-2022 biennium budget, which will replicate 2020 budget, including those adjustments made in response to COVID-19 emergency. This will allow departments to develop their budget based on the current financial information. Budget adjustments can then be made when there is more clarity on the fiscal horizon. Although these days are uncertain, we have dedicated managers and employees prepared to respond effectively to this emergency. We have additional options available if the future financial situation does not match our current projections. I will continue to keep you informed as we get through this unprecedented time together. Attached for your reference are the following documents. The first one is General Fund Projection Spreadsheet. COVID projections 04-15-20_4 PDF. Presents actual March results and projected April through December revenue and expenditure amounts. Amounts recorded are based on historical average percentage of total revenues and expenditures recorded each month, adjusted for current expectations of COVID impacts on this year's budgeted amounts. Below the ending cash balance line are proposed scenario to respond to expected decreased revenues and their expected effect on ending cash balance. Second one is major general fund revenue assumptions. Describes the assumptions used in creating revenue cash flow projections in the general fund projection spreadsheet. General fund cash balance line graph presents the historical pattern of general fund cash balances by the year and 2020 projected based on current expectations of COVID impact. The dashed line of $8 million is projected minimum amount of cash needed for operational cash flow. It represents less than 1 month's expenses. General fund cash balance post-mitigation action line graph presents the same as described above, except now includes the effect of cash balance due to taking mitigation measures for the rest of the year. General fund revenue graph presents historical changes in major revenue sources. General fund expense pie chart presents major groups of expenses and what percentage of whole 2020 budget they represent. Wages and benefits represent 63% of the budget. That's my report. And I would like to add that John Hutchings will be presenting the road fund details as we promised, and he will talk about some of the projects as a separate item. And Sheriff Bill Elfo will update the council on the organizational improvements at the Unified Command. If you would like to hear Mr. Elfo right now, that way he doesn't need to wait for the rest of our discussion. I would request Mr. Elfo to update the council for the Unified Command, please.
Okay, we'll come back to you with questions on your report, but we'll let Bill give his. Thanks, Bill.
All right. Good afternoon. Just to provide a brief update, we've discussed previously what we envisioned changing the organizational structure of the incident command system from a unified command to a single incident commander. And that is a norm in any event where you have multiple jurisdictions. It's to operate the original or the initial response in a unified command, so everyone's represented, and then try to transition into a unified command or a single incident commander. And that will improve decision making. It'll improve communication. It should cut down on some of the any inconsistencies that may occur. So rather than have 12 people rotating in and out, we'll have 2 people, the incident commander and a deputy incident commander that would relieve him and give him some time off. We've selected and I've appointed under my authority as the emergency management director with the consensus of the mayor, consensus of the council president, the consensus of the county executive, Sadhu, Scott McCreary, who's currently serving in the planning chief's role within the incident command system. He's very experienced, very competent at running operations such as this. So tomorrow we will be making the transition, and Scott will be on Thursday we'll be making the full transition to a single incident commander. And that incident commander will have the policy. He'll report to the executive committee, which is the sheriff, the executive, the mayor, and a representative of the Lummi tribe. And then we'll also have the executive committee will link in with the policy committee to keep everyone informed. And we envision as time moves on and we're thinking of more long-term strategies, particularly those related to the economy, that we may want to have another individual with some economic background to do forecasting and make predictions. But we're going to make one move at a time on this, and then look forward to that as we move forward.
Okay, thanks, Sheriff Elfo. Any questions for Bill? Councilmember Browne.
Yeah, Sheriff Elfo, who's the deputy going to be?
Oh, I'm sorry, Andy Day from the Bellingham Fire Department, and Scott is an employee of the Port of Bellingham. He's their emergency management director for the port, and the port has graciously offered him up, and it's going to allow him to continue for a number of months in that assignment. And the city of Bellingham has offered up Andy Day to be the deputy. And I should add, this is not a criticism of anything that's going on. This is just a normal flow, and it's just to make improvements, gain efficiencies, and make sure we operate as a well-oiled machine.
Any other questions for Sheriff Elfo?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Okay, back to Executive Sadhu's report and questions, starting with Councilmember Donovan.
Yeah. Thanks to the executive, everybody, for getting us that information. A couple questions. The document that's titled COVID projections, there's a 1.6 million transfers. So what is that? It says return financial system, and then I can't read the word. That requires council action. So what's that? And then the second question, and then I'll chime off. The graph that's general cash fund balance. I thought I heard you say we wanted to sort of stay above 8 million, but September of 20, it's like down below 5 million. So those two questions is what's the council action required, and then what's the thing with September in that projection? That makes sense?
Yep, it sure does. Good questions, Councilmember Donovan. Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. The $1.6 million is our currently project-based budget for the financial system replacement project, the ERP system. So we have put that project on hold for any expenditures, and if it would be needed, we'll be coming back to council to transfer those dollars back to the general fund to ensure that those dollars will be utilized for general fund purposes into the future. Because it is a project-based budget, it would take council action to do so. So we just wanted to recognize that council action that's required. But that does not have to happen anytime soon. It could happen anytime during the summer, which is why we indicated July or even August associated with it. To your second question, there are two line graphs. One is the general fund cash balance, and then the other is the general fund cash balance with the mitigating actions included in the projections. So you are correct, Councilmember Donovan. If we kept business as usual and expenditures as usual, in September of this year, we're projected to be below $5 million as it relates to cash flow. And so when you take the mitigation measures, which the executive indicated, which was providing a hiring freeze, directing departments to delay general fund contracts, review all expenditures and reduce them by 10%, as well as non-grant funded contracts and other expenditures by 5%. And then if you take those into consideration, you look at the post-mitigated action line graph, which gets us back up above that proposed line that we have as we speak today, above the $8 million for cash flow. So one is without those actions, and then the other line graph is taking the projections and the reduction in general fund expenditures into consideration.
Councilmember Byrd.
What are we actually accounting for as far as the loss goes, or decrease in revenue?
So yeah, there is a document that we sent out that included the assumptions that we provided, that lays out those assumptions into the reduction in general fund revenue.
Yeah, Tyler, since we just got these about an hour ago, I'm trying to find that. Can you tell me what that dollar amount is? Because I'm looking through all the documents and I don't see what the dollar amount is for at this point in time.
Yep. Let me find that number and I'll give it to you as soon as I can.
Yeah, as far as it relates to the council, I'd like to discuss the budgeting portions amongst the council as well. Do we want to do that now, or is that something we want to do later?
How would the administration see that proceeding?
Most, if not all, of the items that we've put into place have been directed by the executive. We wanted to provide the projections to council to understand the fiscally responsible decisions that have been put in place. And we are very open in the next couple of council meetings to discuss the ongoing projections and the next session of budget talks as we move forward.
Councilmember Frazee.
I think under the major general fund revenue assumptions, it says investment interest should be close to 2020 budget of 2.5 million. This is a 1 million less than 2019 revenue. So I'm not sure if we're just saying that it's 1 million less. But my question is, do we know, like in 2008, 2009, did the county do, I didn't look this up, but did we do a hiring freeze? And what other actions did they take during that time? Maybe Treasurer Oliver can tell us, or anyone else who knows. What actions did we take that, and how much was saved?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Councilmember Frazee. Brad Bennett is on the line as well, and he may be able to walk through it as he was participating in the financial decisions back then. But I can tell you that the playbook that we have and the items that we are moving forward are very consistent with those that were made in the last recession in the 2008-2009 period. And it was very, I guess, successful during that time frame to ensure our financial stability during the recession. And that is one reason why we wanted to take quick action to put these in place today, because there is uncertainty on the projections moving forward, but we can only handle what we can handle, and reducing our expenditures is a really good way to start that process. Brad, do you want to add anything more from the past recession once you unmute yourself?
Could I get the question repeated? I'm sorry, I was reading something, and I didn't totally catch it. We were talking about interest income.
It was more about the steps that the county put into place the last recession.
Yeah, this is
whether or not. Yeah.
This is basically the playbook from the last recession. We're taking all the actions that we took in the last recession at this point. And you know, I can dig up that revenue number. I mean, we focused on cash flow because we thought that was the most critical thing to look at, and we did the best we could at estimating our revenues. But we really won't have any additional good information until April. And even that is going to be a little bit sketchy because the state's delayed the filing for sales tax revenues. And that actually is our second largest revenue source. So that's a big, and actually it's the revenue source most affected by what we're going through right now. So that's a big unknown for us.
Councilmember Donovan.
Find my mic. Somebody just give me like a 30,000 foot level explanation of how'd you get 75% as the rate for sales tax coming in, and the 90-something% for property tax? Is that kind of looking at what happened in 2008, or is that something we're getting from the state?
That is our best estimate. I mean, we know that we have 3 kind of decent months, and we're 2 months behind, right? So theoretically, the revenue in the first part of this year will be November, December, January, February, March, right? So because we're 2 months behind, so we looked at it and we thought, well, the shelter in place, if that happens for 2 months, I mean, we know that our sales tax revenues are going to go down dramatically So we basically did our best judgment of what we thought it was going to be. We thought we were going to have 2 really bad months, and then we would start climbing out of the hole. But like I said, until we get some real data, we really don't know what we're up against. This is truly unprecedented. I mean, this is nothing like what happened in 2008.
And I think, Councilmember Donovan, just to build off of that, we will continue to be looking at those assumptions and asking departments where their revenues are and how they're moving forward. And that will be a fluid projection and planning assumption that goes into this as we move forward.
Councilmember Byrd.
Brad, for your assumptions based on department-related revenues, is that directly from what we know as far as how much we've lost so far? So for instance, we're saying building-related revenues down 75%, health permits, mental and physical health fees down, or at 80%.
We said down to 7%. So we've been, again, they're kind of our estimates, but we've been talking to the departments and finding out kind of what's exactly going on right now. And honestly, it's been pretty somewhat encouraging that that planning and development is actually taking permits and work and doing work. And I talked to Superior Court, and they said that they are taking filings and they're relatively busy. So, we're trying to gather all that information we can, but we really won't know until we have some numbers and see what's actually coming through.
Yeah. So in relation to say like health permits, mental and physical health fees, we have on the agenda an item to postpone essentially the requirement for food handlers permits for bars and restaurants and that type of thing. So there was an estimated loss in revenue for that postponing. Is that factored into this, do these numbers kind of come from that, or is it just something we've kind of picked?
We kind of went through each revenue line by line and tried to determine, what the source of that revenue is. We knew that food handler permits were going to be down because they're just not issuing them right now. But we did not coordinate with the health department on that estimate.
Okay. So then when you say you went through line by line, is it safe to assume then that that's really just looking at what happened 2007 to 2008 as far as the loss goes, and then factoring that percentage decrease and using that for this?
No, it was more like looking at Comcast franchise fees and saying, well, that's still probably, people have still probably kept their cable. That's probably still going to be pretty good. And it was just, some of the revenue sources probably aren't as impacted by this recession as others. Where we suspect the most severe reductions are fee-for-service type activities.
Councilmember Browne.
Yeah, so a couple of things, just in rough terms, Brad, what is the overall percentage reduction in revenue and the overall change in expenses that you're forecasting?
Yeah, we really didn't look at it that way, and let me go and backfill and get that information for you. Our focus was basically how to keep the organization solvent throughout the year, and if we were going to stay solvent throughout the year. As far as we didn't really kind of do a projection for the year as a whole because it wouldn't make a difference. Well, we were more concerned that we would be able to fund the organization on an ongoing basis. And so what we're, expecting it is that we're probably going to be in a negative, $3 million over the year is what we're saying right now. But I don't know what that meant as far as what is our revenue number going to be and what is our expenditure number going to be.
So first of all, I just want to acknowledge, I think a couple of things. One is you got a really difficult job. If you can be really good at this and accurate, then maybe you should go and talk about replacing Warren Buffett, because can't hear you. The second thing is I support and applaud the focus on cash flow. I think that is the number one priority. That being said, I think we're being far too optimistic as to what the numbers are going to be. I think they're going to be significantly worse than 2008, and for a couple of reasons. One is, there's the obvious thing of everything stopping. In 2008, things just declined. They went down 10% or 20% or whatever. Most things didn't stop, but everything stopped this time, and trying to restart it's very difficult. But the other side of it is, in addition to all the stuff that we're going to do, we're going to have significant additional expenses that I don't think are being factored in yet. And I'll give you examples. On the public defender's call, which I was on as a member of the council, they're already talking about needing more staff and more resources to deal with the backlog of court cases. And that translates into they're going to want more money. The court costs are going to go up because they're going to have a big backlog. Law enforcement's going to go up because there's going to be degrees of social unrest that typically coincide with poverty and so forth. The public health demands are going to go up for various reasons. Mental health is going to go up because people have not coped well with the circumstances. And then the other thing is, in every department, any of the non-exempt employees who are going to be asked to pick up the difference between what should have been done this year and what needs to be done this year are going to be asking for overtime. So I think this is the first step, but my personal comment is I think the forecast needs to assume multiple potential scenarios that are much worse than what we're looking at now.
Other questions regarding, yes, Tyler Byrd.
Yeah, Brad, I'm in the same boat as Brad, as you could probably imagine. I realize how difficult this is and how much we're asking of you when it comes to this. It's a little bit of a magic, I guess, but with some art in there too. I totally agree. The amount that we're projecting here and the thought that we can do the glide path from 2007 to 2008, I think is going to prove inaccurate in the long run. In 2007, 2008, when we look at kind of that financial crisis and how it started rolling out at the end of 2007 through 2008 and into 2009 and 10, you can see the impact lasted several years and took quite a bit of time to actually hit us and kind of compared to what this is at the end of the day. And so going from nothing to 20 million people unemployed in 4 weeks. You look at housing starts for the beginning of the year, down 23% across the country. The border traffic is down to an average of 200 people a day, roughly, from how many thousands in the past. If you look at any of the mobility data right now, it says that as it relates to kind of day-to-day trips that are essential, grocery store visits and or work, that's down, say, 40%, give or take. But non-essential trips are down 70 to 80%. And so that's going to be a lot of your stuff that I have to assume is going to be related to going out to restaurants or you go shopping at the mall, and spending money after work, essentially. I think that we're going to see a much more significant hit. And I think that we're better off if we can plan for that now. And if we come out of the year with a little extra money than we planned for, than if we're on the other side of that and we're not planning for it. So I'm wondering if we can kind of look at this and consider what it would be then if we lost 10, 15, or 20% of the budget this year off the top, and how would we need to navigate that or those thresholds. Thanks.
Steve Oliver. Unmute, please.
Maybe I could fill this dead air. Our estimates are going to be down 9 million from what that's the number that we project revenues will be down.
Okay, I think we're unmuted now.
Yes, we can hear you.
I think that when we look back at the Great Recession, these were the initial steps that we took back then. There were additional steps that were taken that were necessary to help get us through that period of time. We clawed back millions of dollars back into the general fund from other funds. There were rounds of targeted budget reductions in departments. There were rounds of across the board budget cuts. So I don't think that when we talked about this the other day with Tyler and the team, I don't think anybody thought that this initial response is going to be adequate. There's going to be more that's going to need to be done, but we have so little financial data at this point. It's very difficult to really make a better projection. And I think the thing that we don't want to do is make an overcorrection in the budget and create a whipsaw effect in the organization. But I think that there will be some other incremental steps as we kind of move forward in this process, as we get more economic and financial data. And I wanted to say one more thing, that one of the assumptions that I have is that the county is going to exert as much effort on economic recovery as we are now responding to the COVID pandemic. There's going to be some heavy lifting in our community to get the economy back moving. So I just wanted to kind of put that in the back of your minds, to start thinking about what that might look like. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Byrd.
Yeah, Steve, I think you're spot on. That makes a ton of sense in it as well. It makes me think that within the planning and the projections, as we start modeling this out and figuring out what we're looking for here, that we should also start considering how we might want to reallocate expenses or projects so that we're investing in things like public works projects that are going to have a kind of a larger economic impact in stimulus to our local economy than other things that we might be doing. And so where are those opportunities that we might be able to shift funds away from things that aren't going to perform quite as well to things that will perform much better based on what we know and the data we have.
Tyler Schroeder.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive, that all of these are very valid points. They're all points in which we've been discussing over the last couple of weeks as we were starting this initial projection and making recommendations to the executive about a good first response to the expenditure side. Steve had indicated earlier, we have a work group internally that is the finance office and treasurer representatives and a couple of different representatives from public works and other departments. And we're going to be coming back to council with the additional projections and the additional information when it becomes available, and just kind of look, I don't know if I want to say look forward to, but look forward to the continued conversations of this unprecedented financial situation that we see ourselves in. And if any council members have additional comments or considerations that you'd like to get into that work group, send them my way. Let me be a resource to you all to try to keep that information relevant and present to the team that we have in place putting these projections together.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Councilmember Byrd and then Councilmember Browne.
Yeah, Tyler, thank you. Actually, I'm kind of curious. Work group makes a ton of sense. I'm wondering if we don't kind of make that, expand that a little bit, if possible. And I personally would be interested in being on that and participating and being able to look at some of these information sooner and ask some questions as well. But within that same kind of context, I think it would be very beneficial for us if we could start modeling out. This is a great start. I understand it's an estimate. I understand it's based off the data that we have right now. But if things get worse for us, I'd like to have a plan in place for how we will handle that so that we can quickly implement that plan. It's the same thing we talked about with the COVID when it was first breaking out in March, right? And so versus waiting and having to implement it 2 months after, like we are right now, or have had to do with some of the COVID related stuff. So if we could figure out what those thresholds are and what they might be, and then if they did occur, what actions we would take, we would be in a lot better place. And then if we could assign some like timelines on when we could have those estimates prepared, at least as a preliminary to get us through like the next couple months or the next batch of actions, I think that would be beneficial as well. But we do put committees together for everything else. And so yeah, that might be something that's a larger committee that we will all work on as a group to some extent.
Yeah, you must have been listening to our committee's conversations yesterday, because we walked through, that range of financial projections and then establishing steps to make sure that we're solvent and responding appropriately. So we'll continue those conversations. It's a good one.
The other thing within that same kind of context, I think to my fellow council members would be beneficial for us to sit down, and whether it's today on this call or at our next meeting, to identify kind of what we think the goals are for kind of moving forward through this plan as it relates to our budgeting. And so what do we want to achieve, and over what period of time do we want to achieve those things, as well as kind of maybe defining as a group what we see might be those guiding principles for how we decide what actions we're going to be taking, what things we're looking at funding, so that as the administration and staff are looking at their projects, they can have some idea and guidance from us on, before it gets to us, what we would be looking for and interested in, and how we'll be deciding what to approve and not approve, versus it coming here and then having back and forth here that's less specific and detailed and clear. So I'd like to be able to do that if we have time.
Councilmember Browne.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for the reminder of the fact that this is, or was last time, just the first step. Clearly, there's going to have to be other steps. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When I look back at navigating the 2008 crisis, the one thing I would have done differently if I could do it all over again is I would have done it a lot faster. I realize in hindsight that it just took me longer than I wanted, and I certainly wasn't alone. This seemed to be consistent everywhere around. it just seemed to take most people, including myself, longer to recognize how serious the situation was and how much we had to adapt. So that's the one thing I would have done differently. Going forward, there's a couple of things. When the state numbers come in, I think we have to be a little bit cautious about the first, certainly the March, April numbers, because a lot of people stockpiled stuff. And so the retail sales probably in April probably aren't as bad as we would have thought they were. And I think that's going to be misleading, because I think we're going to see a significant drop off in the second part of April and certainly in May, as people conserve their cash and go through whatever they've stockpiled. The other thing, of course, is going to be, are we going to go through a sawtooth approach where we're running at sort of half speed as the economy for the next 18 months? Because we have to factor that in to the equation. And then the final thing is I would like to participate also in the policy process for this. I've lived through it once before and I had to adapt with an organization that was about half the size of the county.
Councilmember Kershner, then we're going to need to move along to get the health department's report so we can get them back to work. So go ahead, Councilmember Kershner.
I'll make it quick. I like Tyler's idea. I think that the council has a finance committee. I believe it's Tyler, myself, and is it Red? That maybe is the first place that we start working on some of this. And then the second question I had is for Brad. Maybe Steve can answer. What is the annual county budget amount right now? So it helps me to put in context when I hear Brad say 9 million. 9 million of how much are we anticipating losing? Brad or Steve?
General fund?
Go ahead. Right off the top of my head, I would say it is, hold on a second. Let me look. I'm going to say 98 million. But, so it's about, 8 million is about 1 month's, 1/12 of the budget. So that'd be 90 million.
Our budget's only 98 million.
So,
in the
all right.
general fund.
Of course, I'm looking at it in the silos, right? I'm looking at the general fund. There's overall the budget, it's more like let's see, 24 million or something like. I can go pull those numbers if you want to know exactly. Are you talking about the general fund budget or the overall budget?
Well, if you know just off the top both of those figures, that would be helpful. I think all of our funds will be affected, but I know we're talking specifically today about the general fund. But when
Right.
you say 9 million, are you talking about 9 million out of the general fund that you've anticipated losing?
Yes.
And the general fund is about 89. How much did you say it was?
I think it's around 96 million.
96 million. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what's our total annual budget, including all funds? Off the top of your
I
head.
would need to look that up. It actually is. It's a lot of different things, and I have to look up exactly how much that is. I don't know really.
All right.
If you'd like, I can look that up and get it back and get you the information here in a few minutes.
That would be great. Thanks, Brad.
Okay, let's move on to other items under AB 2020-116, an update on COVID-19 from the Health Department. And this is the council acting as the health board. Erica, could we start with you?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. A few updates for you. First, I know that the sheriff talked to you about the Unified Command structural changes, and I just want to reinforce that the health department supports those changes. We have struggled to maintain our staffing at the health department and at Unified Command, and have had high-level staff in that IC position. And I sort of compare it to having a bunch of firefighters at the headquarters when there's fires all over the county. So we're able to take a step back, not from our responsibilities and our strategy as it relates to Unified Command, but be able to pull some of the staff that were serving in that role back to the health department so they can be doing the work of the health department. And so we support that. We will support Scott as he takes on this role, and we'll make sure that we work in collaboration with him as well. So I think it's good all around, and we're looking forward to the change. So I've been telling you the operational period objectives, and they aren't a whole lot different. Unless anyone is really interested in hearing them, I will just send those to you in an email if that works. I do want to talk about a few initiatives that we're working on, and none of this will be new news to you because we've been talking a lot, and there's a lot of different forums for you to get this information. But I think it's important to just talk about our testing strategy for starters. And we've really turned a curve in terms of, I shouldn't say curve because that's this part. We've turned a corner, and now the supplies are available. The testing labs have the ability to take a lot more tests than we've had in the past. And we're working with private providers to be testing everyone that's showing any kind of symptoms. And we're still doing the drive-through testing and the testing at facilities as a health department. We can't, as a health department, take on more capacity just given our limited staffing and resources. And we do see this as a community role. So we are working with private providers to make sure that they're testing everyone that comes in and everyone that calls that is showing signs of COVID or COVID-like symptoms. We are also ramping up and training some of our environmental health staff and other staff to do more of the contact investigations. And we're trying, I think I've talked about this as kind of concentric circles. So the first circle is the person who's tested positive for COVID. So we'll call that person and ask them where they've been, who they've been in contact with, who they may have exposed. And then the next circle out is those direct contacts, family members, friends that they've been around in close proximity, maybe coworkers, and we encourage them to get tested. And we provide that testing for them at our drive-through site, or they can go to their own private provider if they'd like. And what we're trying to do is go further out in further concentric circles so we can get a much better picture of what's really happening. And so then those who are exposed to exposures and those who are exposed to those exposures, and that all is very labor intensive. So we could spend many hours just working on one case and those concentric circles. But this is a best practice nationally. And we know that in order to get a handle on the cases, we need to be doing more of this. And so we're trying to ramp up staffing. We've also been in contact with the state, and the state recognizes that this is a immediate need for local health jurisdictions statewide, and they are working to try to build some internal capacity and other capacity to be helpful to especially the very small jurisdictions that may only have 5 or 10 staff in their health department, but need to be doing this work as well. So we look forward to hearing more about what the state is planning, and in the meantime are really trying to ramp up internally, knowing that the help we may receive because we have these services may be limited, but we are hopeful that we will get some assistance from the state in this area in the next month or two. The third item that I know I've talked with all of you about, and I'm sure you saw from our media briefing yesterday, is this Public Health Advisory Board Task Force. And I just want to be clear. There was some confusion about what this group is intended to do. And I want to be clear that this is really about the public health role in helping businesses encourage and promote social distancing among their employees and patrons or customers, and also ensuring that they are following best practices on infection control. And so it is sort of the technical assistance in nature, but this is not a broad spanning economic recovery initiative. This is really to provide businesses with the technical assistance and the best practices and tools and resources in order to feel like they can be confident that they can keep their staff and customers safe. So that is work that will probably begin as early as next week. I'm working with Unified Command's strategic planning unit, and the PHAB is going to meet. We're trying to set up a special meeting for the PHAB so they can authorize this group. They're really eager to get started on this work. It's a big body of work, but I think there's a lot of people involved, and there's a lot of support that different sectors can provide each other as well in terms of talking through some of the structural or regulatory or space constraints that the health department cannot alone do. We can provide some guidance and some resources, but for example, the nail salons will know better how to keep their customers safe than the health department, but we can give them some basic tools and they can work together to develop some ideas about how they can reopen safely. So this is a big body of work, but it's important, and it supports our prevention goal for this epidemic. We know that we internally can do a lot of the mitigation and case investigation and testing and all of those things, but those will only be successful if we pair it with prevention measures as well. So that is work that is ongoing and to be continued and to come. Lastly, I just want to say that I did get notice. We've been having a lot of conversations with the state, and I know there was a call with elected officials that I listened in on Sunday, and there have been lots of different conversations and signals about what's to come on May 4th. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of questions, and we don't really know. None of us really know, but I did learn that the governor is going to make an address at 5 p.m. tonight on steps toward recovery, and look forward to that and his guidance and how we can implement that and move forward. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Councilmember Ellenboss.
Hi, Erica.
Hi, Ben.
So what I'm hearing is that the Bellingham Herald may have mischaracterized your committee and its purpose. Is that what I'm hearing? Because I really took it that it was much more than the way you just explained it. The way you explained it sounded like a good idea. The way the Herald put it, I was like, the health department, health advisory committee is doing that?
Yeah. Well, in all honesty, I may have gotten extra excited and emoted my excitement for this recovery group, but no, it's always been the idea that we're providing health department based infection control and social distancing guidance for business. We are not here to replace an economic development or an economic recovery group, and nor are we well equipped to do that.
Wonderful, nice work.
Councilmember Byrd.
Hey, Erica. Thanks for joining us again. So I'm curious, as it relates to that specific group, I think that there's a ton of need for that. I love the whole idea of having a group to advise businesses on best practices. I think you're right. It makes sense that like industry groups are going to have the most knowledge about those groups, but giving them a head start or facilitating the conversations, I think has a lot of benefit to it as well. as it relates to that group, though, and how that's happening, how many people do we want on that group, and will we be able to leverage? Because right now the Public Health Advisory Board is made up of a lot of people that might not have direct experience to operating a business and understand kind of what those implications are. And so how many people are on the group? How are you choosing who's going to be added to the group? And yeah, go with it.
Yeah, these are all really good questions, and questions that hopefully in the next week we'll be able to decide. I'm actually meeting this afternoon with who will be our facilitator for this process, who has a lot of these similar questions, and with the strategic planning unit, I believe unit chief or unit director from Unified Command, to start to talk through how functionally this will look and how we can meet the needs of being efficient and moving quickly, but also being thorough and providing the assistance that people need. So it's kind of a tall order, but I think there's some really, I'm getting some good support from some really smart people, and I also welcome your smart people thoughts as well. So.
How will, I could see the need for this group, but I think it's pretty critical. I also see the need for some sort of group that says, hey, we're going to be reopening. How is that going to work? And then really, what's that second group look like? I imagine that's going to be under Unified Command if it's not already. And if it is, how do you see the two groups working together? Because whatever suggestions you're going to be making, the second group's going to need to know about and be able to work in or get feedback on, and however they're looking at opening and what that timeline looks like and what businesses reopen really will obviously impact kind of what you need to be working on too. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Unified Command does have an economic recovery. I think it's called the Economic Recovery. There is a group within Unified Command, and they're really kind of at that high level thinking about the broad economic impacts of, border closures on whole large sectors of our economy, whereas this is really kind of more at the ground level. Once we have direction from the governor about which businesses can open and which will remain closed, we can really start to give them the day-to-day kind of resources. So I see those as sort of spanning from micro to macro, and I agree that we need to be working together and finding that middle area. But I actually am having a conversation with them tomorrow morning to kind of start to tease this out. So yes, totally agree with you though.
Can we also get a document? You did a great job in kind of outlining how the health department is different than Unified Command and what your strategy is versus what theirs is. That was missing for a long period of time, and there's a lot of confusion that created without it. It'd be nice to have something in place here that outlines kind of the mission of each of the groups and what they're going to be boundaries they'll work within, so that we have clarity and they have clarity, and then the public does too. So there's not articles that might be slightly incorrect.
Yeah,
because of that.
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Councilmember Browne.
You go.
So, Ms. Lottenbach, who is on the current economic recovery group that you referenced?
I believe that's chaired by Don Goldberg from the Port of Bellingham. I think the folks from Unified Command could probably answer that question better than I could, but I know that there is a group that's active and has been meeting. Looks like they are about to speak.
So the Economic Recovery Task Force was Economic Impact Task Force rather was originally set up as a result of the 158 different responses to our SBA. Oh, sorry, this is John Gargett, Sheriff's Office Emergency Management. Due to the SBA response, we were the first county to get an SBA declaration as a result of all those that came. What is an SBA? Small Business Administration. Thank you, John. small business declaration for our county. Due to the overwhelming response, we did realize that we needed to have an economic impact task force. The task force generally works outside of direct unified command, and Don Goldberg headed that up. The Port of Bellingham made his entire staff available. There's Gina Stark, there's Jennifer, I forgot Jennifer's last name, I apologize, and 2 or 3 other people. And he also pulled together several people from Western Washington University, as well as other economic groups. So they have been working diligently on the impacts of COVID, and it will be a combination. They have responsibility for the private sector, if you will. Our office has responsibility for the public sector, and the 2 of us have been working quite closely together, principally in the small cities environment, as well as the cross-border task force.
So probably not a need to go into a great discussion on this just yet, but the 2 areas that I'm most concerned about are agriculture and the construction trades, primarily because both of them have weather windows to operate in. They're much more dependent about what happens in the next 3 to 4 months than most other sectors. So I know the agricultural sector is on the list of priorities for a unified command. I'm hoping construction ends up there as well.
Construction is, as well as agriculture is. As you know, there was an announcement yesterday, last night, I think it was formalized today, that the president is stopping all immigration. The only 2 exceptions that came up in our border task force meeting today were both healthcare workers and, I'm going to get it wrong, H-2A workers, which are the agricultural workers. Those are still going to have an impact on our ability to and in the agricultural sector, as well as to a large degree in our construction side. So I know that Dawn is working diligently on both of those areas right now. And I know our border task force today, we're actually meeting with the Mexican consulate on the possible impacts on workers coming up from the south.
Councilmember Byrd.
Erica, have you seen the new Facebook Carnegie project that came out here recently? They're mapping data for across the country.
I haven't. Let me look at that. I bet my staff have, but if they haven't, I'll forward it around. It's a good tool, huh?
It's interesting. So what they've done is Carnegie has gone out and they're doing surveys and asking essentially, I'm not sure exactly what function they're using to acquire the data, but they're asking people if they have symptoms, whether they're flu-like symptoms and then they're defining them as either flu-like or COVID-like. And then from there, they're giving that data somehow, giving access to the data to Facebook. So Facebook has built a interactive map that allows you to see based on each county, what percentage of people have flu-like symptoms and what percentage of people have COVID symptoms. And then it appears that they're going to be mapping that over multiple days so that you could see kind of on a timeline basis, whether it's increasing or decreasing. Currently, it says that 0.88%, so not quite 1% of people here in the county have symptoms for COVID, but roughly 2,000 people. I'm just curious how that kind of relates to some of the other data that you've been using in projections and whether we're including things like that as a leading indicator for where we might be heading, because, yeah.
I'll ask our data staff. I did hear about that this morning. Now, when you mentioned the Facebook, yes, it's intriguing, and I'm curious, but I'll ask our data staff, and I can get back to all of you.
Thanks. And one last question for you: are we getting any information from the hospital at this point on capacity levels and where they're at? We were for a little while after they came and had a meeting with us, but. Yeah, are we still getting that information? And maybe Unified Command can tell. Are they still coming, and do we still have a rep and direct contact? And are we working with them kind of back and forth still?
I'll let Unified Command answer.
They have had somebody here at Unified Command most every day. The reports are not quite what they used to be, but they're still providing reports. They're in good capacity right now. They're in a good position right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ellenboss, we need to kind of move on.
Thanks. Quick question here for Erica. As you may or may not know, I work at a fairly large facility with a lot of employees, and we've been able to successfully mitigate the spread of COVID-19. From any knowledge I have, I don't believe there's a single positive case for any employee of my facility, which is, you know, remarkable, or maybe it isn't. So I guess my question is, you know, I go to Lowe's, I go to Home Depot, I go to the grocery store, I go to Costco, and I'm shoulder to shoulder with people. How many of our, just in general, how much of our spread has come from interactions such as that, or are our mitigation measures that successful?
As far as we know, our mitigation measures are very successful because we've reached that under one-to-one transmission. But I would have to, and we got this question yesterday from the media actually about what percentage of the confirmed cases are from the clusters and what percentage are from general community spread like you speak of. And I know that the data staff are looking at that, so I can forward that along to all of you as well once we have it, if that would be helpful.
But
go ahead and follow up, Ben.
Yeah, so it doesn't stand out to you that we've got a large portion of people who were like, oh, we got this grocery shopping.
We are noticing changes in behavior as time goes on. I have seen a variety of different ways that businesses are operating in terms of keeping customers and employees safe. There are changing sort of behaviors and attitudes about the stay home, stay healthy. And we are noticing that. And it's a concern.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Byrd.
This is probably for Unified Command. Can we get an update on Motel 6? I'd like to know where we're at with spending, if the facility's open, when we got it open, how many people are in it, what's the status of being reimbursed from FEMA, what that looks like.
So this is John Gargett, Sheriff's Office Emergency Management. As of today, all the necessary contracts are in place. There are now, effective today, 6 rooms that can be occupied. There are 3 rooms that are set aside for medical staff from CMAR, as well as for supplies and office work. The whole facility has been fenced and there is a guard shack in place. There really are no major issues at all. There is one issue. In order to open up other rooms, there needs to be additional mattress covers obtained, plastic mattress covers. Those have been ordered. All the local sources have been, they required all the local sources on that. Once those are acquired, then additional rooms could be opened up. There are a few minor outstanding issues that, like on security cameras, there was a request to have security cameras. The cost of them was quite exorbitant, so finance put a hold on it. That's been reevaluated, and felt that there is a need for it, but we're down to a somewhat operational level, at least with the 6 rooms. The food vendor cannot provide food on Sundays, so there's a new contract that's being attempted with McDonald's to go ahead and provide food on Sundays. And not yet have all the microwaves or refrigerators arrived. They have been ordered, but they're on back order. As you can imagine, every community wants mini fridges and microwaves right now. But we did source those through local vendor, DeWard and Bodie.
Thanks, John. So 6 rooms available today out of the 58 we were planning for. Curious, based on the budget numbers or the expense numbers that we were sent over from the administration, it looks like we've contracted with Lighthouse Mission for about $147,000 that we paid them up to this point in time, and then $90,000 for what looks like maybe a food provider as well. So that's, we've already contracted for these expenses, but we only have 6 rooms open. Is that what I'm seeing and hearing?
Go ahead, Tara's here.
I can answer, and Brad Bennett can chime in as well. This is Tara Sundin with Unified Command. All of the contracts, with the exception of staffing, have been written to be based on number of occupants. So food is one of those. So we will only pay for the amount of food that's delivered to the site, which will be based on how many people are there. The same with linen service, the same with cleaning services. The staffing of the facility and the security of this facility will be a constant. So there's going to be some expenditures that are going to go with demand, and then others that are going to be constant throughout the course of the coming months.
Okay. So of the people we have 6 rooms available. Are all 6 rooms full then? Is that correct? And if so, are all those people confirmed COVID cases then?
So we actually don't become operational until tomorrow. So we will have staffing in place as of 8 a.m. tomorrow, and we'll go operational. We've got some of our team trying to get a handle from the hospital and other of the referral agencies, trying to get a better handle on how many people they expect to be entering the facility. And right now, we aren't sure how many people they have. We don't expect a high amount of people coming into the facility in the next couple of days.
Councilmember Kershner.
I'm sorry, I'll let Tyler finish his thought, and then I'll go. Go ahead, Tyler.
Okay, I didn't see him trying to do something else. Go ahead, Tyler.
When do we anticipate that the rest of those rooms will be open and available for occupancy then?
We think another 6 are going to be available this week. Really that's a question probably for Brad Bennett, because it's the finance department that is actually doing a lot of the procurement of the goods. All the services are ready to go, which is good, but some of the goods, it just takes, we've got a longer lead time on the various supplies needed.
I can add that it's pretty frustrating. We actually need to outfit the rooms kind of in blocks, because the stuff that we're trying to buy just isn't available, and we've
Send them an email.
and I know, can you guys hear me? I'm getting some feedback. Am I cutting out?
I hear you now.
Okay, so we've tried, our strategies for getting stuff has been changing daily. We were successful with some Amazon early on. Then Amazon got so that the delivery dates were in mid-May. We have kind of cleaned out all the local stores of microwaves and mini fridges, and we're clearing out Target for mattress pads. So what we thought we needed to do is get as many rooms as get like the first 20 rooms ready to go, and then we'll move on and try to get another 20.
Yeah, I was just going to add, so Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive, I was at a Unified Command over the weekend, well, for many days now, and one of the direction that was given through Unified Command was to accomplish the rooms being ready in blocks of 10 and having about 20 rooms ready and being able to set the trigger needed to be able to increase the room counts as needed based off of the need within a 4-day period. So we don't plan on utilizing all 60 beds to be ready, but there is a plan in place to be able to accomplish a 10-room block moving forward based off the need that we see.
Okay, Councilmember Kershner is next, then Browne, and then Don. We need to wrap this up very soon. So let's, in the next 7 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Kershner.
Okay, so I'm kind of confused. If we're renting a motel, it seems like those rooms would be ready to use. So I'm wondering what have we found that has made those rooms not ready to use? I would assume a motel has a bed, it has a bathroom, it has potentially a microwave and a refrigerator, at least the ones I know of do. So are we refurbishing these rooms? Did we run into problems with these rooms? Why are they not ready? And if they're not ready, is there anybody thinking about using a hotel or a motel room that is ready?
This again is Tara Sundin with Unified Command. About a week out here, I was directed by Unified Command to find an isolation and quarantine facility. The Whatcom County Health Department was very clear on what types of facilities were preferred. And the preferred facility is a motel, which has access to the exterior, so you aren't using common hallways. A preference to not have as much carpeting because it's hard to actually disinfect cloth, etc. So very quickly, we actually worked on this deal with Motel 6 in about a week. We came up with a negotiation. And why we were so successful in reaching the terms of that deal so quickly is because Motel 6 was in the process of selling. So we had a business that was going to be changing hands. They were going to sell to another motelier. And we knew that the motel had been planning on going out of business for a while, so there weren't a lot of furnishings and fixtures on site, like refrigerators. And at this time, by the way, nobody knew that it would take a couple of weeks to find refrigerators and microwaves. But we negotiated a very favorable deal at that time for Motel 6. Much lower price than they are doing across this country. And the reason for that is they were in a position, they were not in a great position for selling, and that sale got hung up because of COVID. So we negotiated a very low rate. We're paying $15 per room per night, but that comes with some additional costs on the other side. And so hopefully that answers your questions, but we have to bring in some of our own furnishings, and we're trying to protect the assets that Motel 6 has, like mattresses, so that the county at the end of this doesn't have to replace those assets.
Mr. Browne?
So just a quick follow-up. Are we going to be then recouping everything that we put into this motel when this is over? Does the motel sell at a much improved condition?
We're not sure what the condition's going to be, but the furnishings are owned by Whatcom County. So at the end of the term, there might be some negotiation, the ability to negotiate with the new management of Motel 6.
Mr. Browne, then Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, if we're struggling to open these rooms because we lack refrigerators and microwaves and mattress protectors, it's consideration being given to asking the community to donate those items if they have them.
Mr. Donovan?
I was going to say, I got a 1-year-old mini fridge in my shop. Can have it. Might have a microwave out there too. But they're new. So let me know where to bring it.
I think that question, we can direct that towards the logistics division of Whatcom Unified Command, and between logistics and the finance division, we could make that recommendation.
The biggest limiting factor at this point is waterproof mattress covers. They are extremely hard to find right now. And that's really the only thing that we don't have that's stopping us from activating more rooms right now is literally mattress covers.
Mr. Browne?
Again, we are opening tomorrow, which is, I think everybody should be pretty proud of the work that's been done in a very short amount of time through Whatcom Unified Command, and Whatcom County Health Department's been huge in the staff that have dedicated their time and expertise to developing this program. There's a lot more to this than mattress pads or refrigerators. So a soft opening is what we're starting with this week, and I think that's actually a wise way to approach this, with new staff being hired and will be on site tomorrow. So I think within the next couple of days we'll have probably 13 rooms available, and I think we'll be able to meet the demand over the next couple of weeks.
Mr. Browne?
Just to finish up, I think the mattress covers could be made by one of the sail making companies using one of the local sail making companies using Tyvek. The Makerspace has been doing that for St. Joe's Hospital, making theater gowns or gowns out of Tyvek, which are reusable. So I think the same could be done with the mattress covers.
Mr. Byrd?
So where do we stand with our reimbursement for this project then?
So this is John Gargett again, Sheriff's Office Emergency Management. I did get the pre-approval for this facility from FEMA for the full amount of $1.35 million, I believe was the amount we submitted in that. The rules have changed with FEMA, and they have clarified a few things. Number one is that while they approved it for 90 days on the initial go around, they have changed that, not just for us, but nationwide, that it has to be reapproved in 30 days. So we'll try and stretch that as long as we can. But they're going to look at the cost versus the number of people served. That's what they've told us. So hopefully we'll get those people in there and be able to keep that open. But we will have to do that each time. The other thing that they've clarified is that case management and medical treatment is not covered by FEMA. So those costs will have to be absorbed in the commerce grants, which are already there. And a lot of this funding has come from the commerce grant, by the way. So I would say best case scenario, we'll probably get, well, with the pre-approval, there's probably a 95% chance that for the eligible portions of outfitting the facility and putting it in operation, that will get reimbursed for that. I'd say there's also a chance, though, that a number of the things that we're doing, like security cameras as an example, they'll disqualify. So we're trying to stay on top of it and stay in touch with FEMA on everything that gets pushed through.
What percentage of that are things that are going to be questionable, I guess, that we might be on the hook for, one? And two, when did that 30-day clock start? Was that 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago when the lease was signed, or was it, when did the clock start?
Yeah, the clock actually started when they pre-approved it. That's more of at this point, it's easy to justify in this case that they'll extend it. I'm not worried about them extending it. Technically, they could say, hey, you've been into it for 3 weeks now and you don't have anybody in there. We're not going to keep it. But we have very good reason for what we're doing. So I'm good on the first one. Sorry, Councilman Byrd, what was your second question?
Oh, John, do you have an actual, like a start date then, or as far as when that clock started? for our first
Yeah, that
30
would
days?
be the date the contract was signed and approved by FEMA, which I think was March 18th. Tara, do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was towards the end of March, I think.
Was it closer to the end? Okay. Yeah,
We're at that 30-day period already then. Is that? would that
technically,
be-
yeah. But again, they know we have to get the thing ready. So the first one won't be an issue, but going forward, it'll be dependent on occupancy and all of those things. April 9th?
That was approved.
It was approved on April 9th. So about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, something like that.
I'm curious, it doesn't seem like there's a huge need necessarily for microwaves and refrigerators if we are also hiring vendors to come in and supply food multiple times a day and buying, soft snacks or for these people to consume on site. On one hand. On the other, I'm a little concerned that if we're going to spend $400,000 per month, and that's going to be divided by the 6 rooms that we have now, that's going to put us at a cost of like $66,000 per room. So if that's the case, is there conversations to how do we more rapidly open the remaining number of rooms so that we can get them all open in the next couple of days and utilized? Or is there any conversation about whether we should be opening at all and whether 6 possible rooms really drives enough need and demand to actually have the facility open at this point in time?
Tara, did you want to take that?
To the food response, we decided to go with a different type of approach for this facility where we're working with one of our nonprofits that both the county and others have a track record with, which is Maple Alley Inn. And they're going to provide food. They'll drop off food once every other day. And so they'll be bringing in meals for 2 days. And so our strategy was, rather than have a special meal service every meal, it was to do it that way. And that's why we're having refrigerators and microwaves. We aren't seeing, we know that the hospital wants this facility, and they want this facility opened so that in the event, and this has happened over the last couple of weeks, that they have people at the hospital that shouldn't be at the hospital and could be here, they can go there. But we aren't hearing that they have 20 or 30 people right now. So I think our strategy, I think we're all hearing you that let's try and procure these services as quickly as possible. But I think that we're okay with 13 rooms over the next couple of weeks. And I also think, it's kind of an interesting, we don't want to hurry up and try and have a bunch of COVID positive people that have to go here, right? So the community, that's the conundrum. As a community that's doing really well, we need to be thankful for how well that we're doing and that we have this backup plan. But to hope that it fills up is maybe not the way we should be thinking about it, but that we have this available in the event that we need it.
Yeah, I appreciate that there. To be clear, I'm not saying I hope to fill it up, but what I'm asking is, are we looking at how it also doesn't make sense to spend $400,000 to house 6 people? And so at that point in time, if that's going to be the case, or if we're not projecting an increase to a full need for this facility for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, is there an alternative plan that we can put in place to manage those 6 people? Because what I heard you say earlier is that it doesn't matter if we have 6 people or if we have 60 people, you're still paying for the costs for that, well, all your fixed costs. So your security personnel on site, your lighthouse mission contract, which I'm not sure what that is, the same like food contracts that you have, you're still acquiring all the beds, all the refrigerators, all of the microwaves, all the pads, all of the shampoos, the cleaners, everything else. And so if that's the case, then does it really make sense to open up a $400,000 facility for 6 people? If not, or what's the alternative plan, and how are we making that decision? When's it going to be made?
Tyler, John Gargett again. I think at this point, it's too early to assume that 400,000 is for 6 rooms, 1, and 2, there are always startup costs with something like this, and you've got to make the startup costs. So I think we literally have the we actually have to wait and see if we get people in there really before we could determine the cost per room. But with respect to alternatives, as you know, we are looking at 3 other alternatives to also serve the county as well, and that's a completely different model based off some of the experiences we've had with this one. So,
Councilmember Donovan.
Yeah, hey, I really appreciate the need for facilities like that. Hopefully they don't end up being full, but they are taking pressure off the hospital. If that's part of the logic, is there any chance the hospital is going to be contributing to some of the financing of this?
Yeah, we've been fortunate to have Peace Health step forward and undertake the bed control. So one of the things with all these facilities in Bellingham right now, we just have the one, or in Whatcom County, just the one. But bed control is a really important aspect. So the hospital is going to be taking on that responsibility, which is a great service that we haven't really calculated in the cost, but a fantastic service that they're providing.
What's bed control? I'm sorry.
Bed control, they're the ones that are keeping track of the referrals and who's in the rooms and when they can leave the rooms. And they would do that probably, my understanding is for multiple facilities in the event we need multiple facilities.
Okay, well, thank you, Erica, for your, did you have one more thing, Tyler?
Yeah, I do. Kathy had her hand up first, though. Kathy.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you for that, Tara, but it seems to me like Peace Health should be kicking in a lot more resources into these facilities than just bed control. I'm glad they're willing to do that, but really, it looks like we're setting these up to take the costs away off of Peace Health Hospital, and I think we should be asking them to really put more resources into these things. Just my 2 cents.
And my original understanding of this was that this project in this site was going to be specific to COVID-19 individuals that had been tested positive or had symptoms and come in contact would likely test positive at a later time. Not that we would be taking people out of the hospital and putting them there. So can you clarify, is this really everyone there will have COVID or have a very high likelihood of having it? We're really just waiting to see. The 1 and 2, if the hospital has plenty of capacity right now, and we only see a need for 16 or 6 to 13 beds right now, do we pause the contracts for food and security on site and those other things and just continue to set this site up without activating the rest of those expenses and leave those people in the hospital if they're only, if this is basically an overflow site for the hospital and we're saying that that's where we're going to be getting people? Let's just leave them there and until that need becomes apparent, and then turn this facility on.
So I can answer the first question, which, Tyler, you're correct. This is a facility, a COVID facility. This isn't just to move non-COVID people out of the hospital. This is to create capacity at the hospital in the event they become, I guess, inundated, maybe not be the right word, but that's what's coming to mind right now, as a result of the COVID virus. So these are going to be, this is isolation and quarantine. It could be that it turns to isolation only, which is COVID positive or symptomatic, but the hospital also is asking us for right now, while there's capacity, to have some rooms available for quarantine, for those that cannot self-quarantine themselves.
Okay, we have a lot of agenda items to get through, guys. These are all really valid questions, don't get me wrong, and I'd like to see you submit those through, I guess, Erica, would that still be you be the venue to get these kinds of questions in?
I'm sorry, I missed that question. Barry,
No,
could you ask?
I was just trying to move our agenda along a little bit, but I was wondering, these are important questions that are getting asked, and are you still our contact for these types of questions to get answered?
Yes, I can. If I can't answer the questions, I knew that there were some about this facility, so I was able to draw from Unified Command, and I'm happy to help facilitate for that if you have questions that I can't answer. So, yep.
Okay.
Barry, you're muted.
Sorry about that. We've cleared the first two items on our agenda, which is update on COVID-19 and discussion of strategies related to COVID-19, which was AB 2020-117. We're now on AB 2020-163, which is ordinance amending the 2020 Whatcom County budget, request number 9 in the amount of $261,127, revised from the original proposed amount to include only essential items. So, administration, I'll let you take it.
So Tyler Schroeder, budget supplemental, like the council has seen many times. If there's any questions on them, we're here to answer. But nothing more to add at this time.
Okay, let's start with a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Browne moves, Donovan seconds, and Mr. Donovan, discussion.
Yeah, my only question is the funds for the Northwest Annex, that meets our definition of essential, or does it?
Yeah, my understanding is, Tyler Schroeder, my understanding is we are reviewing these at the executive's office, also going through Karen Frakes before they go to the council. And being that one of our need is economic recovery as we move forward, and we are starting the capital improvement planning process. As the executive talked about on this one a few council meetings ago, we heard that there was support to move forward from council to do some preliminary design work out at Northwest Annex.
Gotcha, thanks.
Councilmember Browne.
Potential projects that would be rich, shovel ready or whatever if we get stimulus money.
That's the idea, that's correct.
Mr. Browne.
Yeah, I support the administration on this and would encourage them to bring further projects to our attention so we can position ourselves to take advantage of stimulus money when it happens.
Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Kershner.
Is the Northwest Annex the current place where we have planning and development services?
That's correct.
And so it looks like we're looking at doing some redevelopment there. Are we talking about taking that building to the ground and building a new building?
There's some discussion about, locating general government operations at that facility. And the idea would be to build some 30,000 square feet of office space between the intersection there at Northwest and Smith and the soccer fields and ball fields.
And roundabout also.
And then there's also a connected roundabout project that is on the 6-year plan for public works.
And so what would the office space be used for?
That's what the dollars are really being asked to consider and do the research in the background needed to be able to provide some more definition. We've had a long-standing general government office space need. Planning development services is one. I think everybody can agree that the facility out at Northwest Annex, which used to be many things over the years, needs to be replaced, and we need to find up to standard office space for planning development services. We've also talked about the health department needing to find legitimate office space, and there is many times planning for that as well. And with the executive coming into place, the facilities manager and myself wanted to evaluate Northwest Annex for some redevelopment out there. And we don't have the details to what that would be, but it is all just general government operations and relocating in that area that we could see some of our satellite facilities to be out there.
So at this time, it's all preliminary and somewhat speculative, other than planning and development and potentially the health department having some offices out there?
Yeah, one idea may be to locate the road department, public works, utilizing the health department to be in Civic Center. And then you would have public works and planning development services at that location, which is near their shop that public works already has out at Northwest and Annex, Northwest and Smith. And then there was some discussion on satellite sheriff's facility, so that we can locate some of our deputies that are doing most of their work out throughout the county, closer to where their calls are, and have some type of satellite facility out there. But again, all of these are the capital facility planning kind of questions and research that we would do with these dollars that we're proposing, so we can come back with more definition to get a project ready for construction in the near term.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Byrd?
Tyler, is there, within this bucket, we've talked about for years that we have about $250,000 in capital projects and maintenance projects that the county needs done. Is this one of those projects?
Could you clarify, Councilmember Byrd? I didn't quite get your question.
For the last couple of years, there's been this constant conversation about $250 million, give or take, of projects.
Yes.
So this is one of those projects?
That's correct. This would be a solution to our ongoing capital needs that we haven't been able to solve in the past.
Okay. And then if we did that little shuffle as far as office space goes, that would then open up the health department's office space or building. In theory, would we be looking to sell that property?
That would be a good conversation for us to have with the council and see if it's a needed asset or not, if all of those dominoes fell into place.
Okay. And then will we also be looking at whether it makes sense to include facilities there too, so we're not having to lease that property from the port that they're currently in?
You know, we hadn't had that consideration at this point because we did invest some money into that facility. And I recommend you go in and take a look at the facility because it's going to meet our facility needs for many years to come. And I don't believe there's a cost to the ongoing lease of that property. I'd have to confirm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other discussion on the motion to approve? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Red Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
No.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
That passes 6-1 with Councilmember Ellenboss opposed. The next three items, items 4, 5, and 6, have been withdrawn through both the executive's office and some coordination through the clerk of the council. So we're on item 7. It is request authorization, AB 2020-171. Request authorization for the county executive to enter into a grant agreement between the Whatcom County Flood Control District and the Department of Ecology in the amount of $7,550,000. And this is the council acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. Let's start with a motion.
Move to
I'll move
approve.
approval.
Second.
Kershner moves, Donovan seconds, discussion. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Red Browne,
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We're now on item 8, which is AB 2020-172. Request authorization for the county executive to award bid number 20-17 and enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Combined Construction Incorporated for the Flynn Road Fish Trap Creek Bridge number 51 repair project in the amount of $38,434.50.
Move to approve.
Second.
Donovan moves, Frazee seconds. Discussion. Is there anything from staff on this?
John Hutchings, the Public Works Director, is available to give some background on road fund information and the project itself. John?
Yeah, I saw him reaching for the unmute. So go ahead, John Hutchings.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I'm interested in making sure that the council has the information necessary to gather up the implications of advancing our capital programs through 2020 and setting us up for successful bids to expend any federal monies that come our way as a result of this whole COVID thing, that is stimulus monies. And in order to make that happen, the Public Works folks have put together, financial folks have put together an analysis of the fund, and that has been emailed to you. And in light of the fact that you've had an extensive conversation about general fund cash flow, I will refrain from going through the details of that document, only to say that it is developed under similar assumptions that went into the general fund analysis, and demonstrates the same kind of cash flow month to month, in a month-to-month basis throughout the rest of the year. And the important point that you will see in that document when you look at it is simply that that under the existing budget authorities that have been provided through last year's budget, the fund is expected to have about $16 million in reserves at the end of this year. And that point is made to set you at ease with respect to the impacts of moving through our planned capital investments. And I think I would like to leave you with reminding you that spending those dollars in order to be able to present to the stimulus opportunities a pretty aggressive capital program so that we can get these projects out on the ground and put people to work is an important component of this whole recovery conversation, and one that we take very seriously. So from our perspective, making sure that these bid awards get made, the one that you just passed, for example, so that we can pull these contracts together and get these contractors out on the ground and or out on the roads. One aside as it relates to COVID is every one of these contracts or these bids that are going out, these contracts that are being let with a provision that requires the contractor to develop and present a COVID response plan of their own, so that we can be assured that these public dollars are driving projects that will result in workers being protected who are doing the work. So that's part and parcel to not only our public works contracts, but also those of other public works departments in our community. So Jim Karcher, the county engineer, has been working with the other public works directors and engineering folks from the other jurisdictions and sharing information about how they're doing that. And so there's some commonality in what contractors see out and around the county. So I think that's the important points to be made here. I'm happy to answer any specific questions about this particular analysis, and then would encourage you to take it home, take a look at it, and if there's some more conversation we need to have in the immediate term about what the trajectory is for the road fund over the course of 2020, and then keeping in mind that as we set up for budget conversations for the 2021-22 fiscal years, we'll be able to have some more details about what the implications of an aggressive strategy to get these dollars out on the street, what that looks like. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Kershner and then Councilmember Donovan.
Thanks, John. I have two questions. One is, can the road fund be used, transferred to general funds for any purposes? The second question is, where is this Fish Trap Creek Bridge number 51 repair project located?
Okay, so the first question is, can the road fund be used to support general fund purposes? And the short answer to that question is no. The legislature has very clearly established the boundaries for which, the purposes for which road fund collections can be directed, and they are for road fund transportation purposes, by and large within the right of way. There is some ability for other funds to borrow from the road fund. So, for example, if there was a crisis in the general fund, say next fiscal year because of this economic situation, then that could certainly be considered. And as you rank the austerity measures that one might implement in all of our funds, the first set of those was set in place by the executive just recently in the way of hiring freezes and that sort of thing. Those things will also preserve some of that road fund should it be needed to be used in some kind of emergency fashion down the road as a loan. But keep in mind that those monies all must be tracked and paid back, so on and so forth, in order to preserve the fund.
Excuse me, John. Should we start the planning meeting?
Yes, please start without me. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two jobs at once here. The second question is about where Flynn Road is and the bridge over Fish Trap Creek, and that is just to the west of Linden, just to the north of the river, and it serves a rural part of the county there. The important point of the important driver behind getting this repair done is that it prevents farm traffic from needing to be detoured onto the Guide Meridian, which of course is a major safety concern for us. So we need to see this work get done as quickly as possible, so those farmers can get to work and not have to put everybody else at risk on the guide.
Mr. Donovan. Unmute.
Yeah, it takes me a while to find that thing. Hey, John, and thanks for sending out that fund balance thing. It made it a lot easier to digest the previous vote we just did. But in looking at the, so there's two big projected revenue bumps coming in from, I assume it's tax money, 6.3 in April, 5.6 million in October. And am I safe to say, even if that came in at 50% of what's projected, we could still have a sense using these numbers about what the fund balance will be at the end of the year? Or is this anticipating already reduced revenues coming in from the gas tax?
Yeah, so the details of the revenue assumptions, I will defer to Randy Rydell, who's our financial manager, but to just generally, the same assumptions, revenue assumptions, by and large, were made in this analysis as with the general fund analysis, and that was with some slight decreases in projections. And I think, yes, I think that those are reasonable because keep in mind the road fund is 99%, maybe 95% a property tax driven fund. So throughout the rest of 2020, it's very unlikely that we'll see that substantial of a drop in revenues. Now, going forward, we'll have to think about that in terms of our revenue projections for the next biennium. But for 2020, I suspect that these are pretty reasonable.
Okay, so
if you wanted to make
that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Say again, I was going to say if you did think that there would be a greater decrease, if you could simply scale that number by that percent, and you would see what the implications are.
So the line that says taxes is primarily property tax, but it also might include some gas tax money that we kick back. But it's the vast majority of that line.
That is correct.
Is property taxes. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Councilmember Byrd.
John, thanks for having this done. I'm looking at it, and one of the things that kind of jumps out is the timber line item. That is revenue we generate, my understanding, based on timber sales. So when timber's harvested, we get a percentage of that. In talking to some of the timber guys out there, what I'm hearing is that they're actually working 1 day a week right now, and their big problem is that the mills that they send their timber to, because of social distancing, can't operate and take on as much timber as they have in the past. And as we reopen the economy, I would expect that continues, that even though businesses come back, that we're going to be asking them to continue doing social distancing measures. Our best case projections say that we would be done in November based on that data, with kind of the last case going away in November time period. So I think when it comes to modeling, we're probably looking at multiple months of social distancing and the impacts that would have on financials. So I'm wondering if there is, one, kind of maybe further reductions in this, and two, how we might be looking at supplementing this budget or other budgets that you have to really spend as much money as possible on public works projects to really kind of kickstart the economy. So I want to make sure that you have the money that you're accounting for, and that we're also looking at opportunities to bring more money on board to really kind of drive home these types of projects, because we do know that they have a significant impact on the economy. So any thoughts on that, or kind of how we're handling that, or what that might look like?
Yeah, so first of all, Councilmember Byrd, I do appreciate both of those comments. They both have a fair bit of, well, a lot of merit. That is that those timber revenues could very well decline. Whether that has a major impact on the revenue stream, given just the magnitude of those revenues compared to the road fund, the property tax income, it probably won't have a huge impact. However, as we see this roll out there, as Brad mentioned, there will certainly be some adjustments going forward, and just like he suggested, we will be refining these numbers month to month and quarter to quarter. And then in terms of how we might supplement or somehow accelerate the delivery of capital projects, I think that is a very reasonable conversation to have. And I should mention that already a number of our capital, particularly on stormwater, our stormwater capital programs are funded by outside dollars from real estate excise tax and others, all of which we have to reconsider going into next biennium simply because those revenues are likely to be drying up as well. So I think over the course of the next couple of quarters, we will want to think very hard about how we turn the road funds capital spending into dollars out on the ground into projects that we can deliver. And I can tell you that at the executive's request, we have been working internally to get our arms around what that looks like. We've got a preliminary stimulus project list put together already, and the executive is working through the Council of Governments, our regional transportation organization, to organize the stimulus conversation from a regional perspective, so that we can have some cogency in what we, the city of Bellingham, and the small cities are preparing to put forward in the way of requests. We don't want to be competing with each other. Rather, we want to make our stimulus effort be more competitive across the state, across the nation. So there's a fair bit being done, and I can assure you that we'll be back to talk more about that in the coming weeks and months.
Other discussion on the motion to approve?
Thank you, John.
Being none, please call the roll.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Red Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes. That passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 9, which is AB 2020-177, Emergency Ordinance amending the 2020 Whatcom County budget, request number 11, in the amount of $154,946. We'll start with a motion. Carol?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Frazee moves, Browne seconds. Discussion. Does the administration want to say anything about this?
Yeah, Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. This is CDBG public service grant dollars that became aware to our knowledge specific to COVID-19 funding. We likely could have brought this forward as a regular ordinance. Just wanted to bring it forward as an emergency so that we could have it available as soon as possible. Look forward to council's decision on it.
Tyler, is this connected to the intro item, which is the same amount of money?
Yes, it is.
So are we considering this twice or once?
I think my understanding was that the intro item was to make it permanent, but I would have to double check.
Okay, so it's not asking for 300.
It is not asking for the two amounts, no.
Okay.
It is one as an emergency just in case we need it, and the second one is to go through the normal process to establish it as a permanent budget ordinance.
Gotcha. Councilmember Ellenboss.
Just, you might want to proofread these things before you send them to us. There's stuff in there that spell check doesn't catch.
That's a good point.
Other discussion on the motion? Mr. Browne?
I'm just a bit confused. What are you saying is it is duplicative to?
There's an introduction item that's the same amount. Other discussion. Mr. Ellenboss.
Rod, I'm going to clarify for you because I don't think they're going to say it. If they can't get the votes at 5-2 or whatever for an emergency, then it'd be an introductory item so they can get it in 2 weeks with less than 5 votes.
Yep, no, understand now. Thanks.
Any more discussion? Yes, Mr. Donovan.
To make sure I'm on the right line here. This is 2021-77.
Yes. 2020-177. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Rudd Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Next up is item number 10, AB 2020-173, ordinance establishing a process for information to be disclosed to the Division of Emergency Management, the county executive, the county health board, and the public during a public health emergency. Mr. Donovan?
I want to make sure we're all on the literally same page for this one because we've got 2 different versions in the packet. And then was there another one emailed as well?
I'll let Councilmember Browne speak to that.
So I'll move approval of the one that was introduced last meeting. And then I'm going to make a motion to amend to make a slight change to the language to shift it from the administrative director and the health department officer to just the health department.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mr. Ellenboss.
Yeah, real quick, Councilmember Browne, you had mentioned needing to amend it, and it's hard because I only have this little teeny computer screen. I wish I had more screens so I could flip back and forth and look at things. So bear with me for a minute, but you had mentioned something about the charter referring to us not being able to direct the executive offices, correct? Okay, so then I just want to point out that it says in section 2.24 of the charter, they shall not give orders to or direct either publicly or privately any officer or employee subject to the direction and supervision of the county executive, executive branch, or other elected official. Interaction between the county council, its staff, and individual council members and those officers and employees within the executive branch shall follow procedures agreed to by the county executive and the county council. So I guess I would argue that you wouldn't need to amend that because us acting as the health board is a pre-agreed upon procedure for interacting with the executive's offices. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think I understand your point. I'm still a bit happier doing it this way just because I think the charter is clear. It says the council's role is to establish the powers and responsibilities of county departments. And that's in section 2.2C. So I was just trying to be more consistent with my reading of the charter. So it gets us to the same goal but it just focuses on a council to department definition as opposed to a council to employee definition.
Councilmember Byrd.
So for clarity, we're working off the one in our packet right now.
There's one I sent at 10:32 yesterday, which has highlighted amendments, and that is the motion to amend that Donovan and I introduced a couple months ago.
Okay, give me a second.
It's on the screen now.
Okay, so it's just those amendments. There's a lot of parts about this that I really appreciate, Brad. So thanks for putting it together. I'm hoping that we can make a couple changes to it, specifically in here, the line items that require a majority or a supermajority approval. I think that it should just be a strict majority of the council versus a supermajority. Let me see. Hold on.
Can I just suggest procedurally we dispose of the motion that Donovan and I put forward? And if you want to make another motion to amend, we do that.
I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. I wasn't able to hear you. Could you say that again?
I was just asking, I think procedurally what we need to do is to dispose of the motion to amend that Donovan and I put down, and then you can make a separate motion to amend if you want. Do you follow me?
That is the motion that's on the table. So
yeah, so
you're probably correct, Mr. Browne. Rather than to try to amend an amendment, it would be best to proceed
yeah, I
and
think
open it up for.
it's difficult to vote on multiple amendments at the same time. So
Okay, so further discussion on Mr. Browne's motion and Donovan's second.
And that's the motion to amend.
Right. Mr. Donovan.
I had this in my email this afternoon. I was actually talking with Rudd about it and I can't find it. Can we get that sent around again? It's hard to work off the screen and go back and forth.
It's at 10:32 yesterday morning is the time.
I can't find that either.
I'll send it to you all again.
It was there.
Mr. Allenboss.
I guess 2.24 is pretty clear that we can interact with the employees with an agreed upon procedure. And when you read the state law and its intentions of what a health board does, it seems to be pretty clear that we do interact with some of the employees of the health department. Otherwise, what would be the point of having a health board? I see no need to amend it any further than what Councilmember Browne. I think it functions better in the original form that Councilmember Browne brought forth. So I'm not in favor of amending it.
Other discussion? Ms. Kershner.
Can I ask Councilmember Browne what the purpose of this ordinance would achieve that we don't already have in code currently? What is it you're trying to do?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion about who controls the release of information and who needs what information in order to do their job. We have, as a council, in an emergency situation, we have two primary roles, as according to the emergency plan. One of which is to replace elected officials who offices that are vacant. That's not an issue at the moment. And the other is to appropriate money when necessary. I think in order for us to do our job and to be able to do it promptly, we need to be up to speed with the information that is being used to determine what appropriations need to be done. And we need to be able to have access to the information that we feel we need in order to execute our responsibilities properly. So I just wanted to make sure there was clarity that unified command, that the county council, the executive's office, all have access to the same information so we can react and execute our jobs in parallel as equals as rapidly as possible.
Okay, I need to jump in here and correct some procedural things. We can't have a motion to amend without a motion to adopt. So we're going to have to back up a little here. And first, I will entertain a motion to adopt, and then we can proceed with the motion to amend.
So I make a motion to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to,
Which version we're adopting?
It's the original version that's in the council packet.
yeah, we have to start there.
Yep.
So Donovan seconds, Browne moved. I saw Ben's hand go up.
I was gonna second it.
Oh, okay.
And now I make a motion to amend the version that was introduced 2 weeks ago with the changes as indicated in the document I've resent a couple of minutes ago.
Okay.
Carol got it.
Donovan seconds, beat Frazee by a millisecond. Discussion on that motion to amend. Tyler?
And so it's just the changes in yellow?
Correct.
That's the only changed?
But the only thing we're voting on now is the motion to change what I put in yellow.
Anything more on that? Okay, I lose you all when I get the screen put up, so I can't see if anybody's got their hand up. Thank you. Ms. Kershner.
So why would we take out the administrative director? What's your reasoning for that, Rudd? Why would you amend that out?
Well, again, I'm going back to my read of our authority under the county charter. It's to set the responsibilities of the department, not the responsibilities of the employees of the department. Now, obviously, the people who would have to respond would be the health director or the health officer. So it's sort of a bit of wordsmithing. It doesn't change the outcome. It just is, in my mind, it's just consistent with our authority under the charter.
Mr. Alabas.
Okay, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing again, but it's very clear that we can interact with them in 2.24 with an agreed upon procedure. And I would say that that agreed upon procedure would be us acting as the health board, because we do often interact and give direction and make suggestions. And that is the agreed upon procedure, us acting as the health board. So I think that, like I said before, I don't see a need to amend it. I think it's more functional the way you originally proposed it. And I think there's absolutely justification to leave the way.
Mr. Browne, then Ms. Kershner.
So I hear what you're saying, Mr. Ellenbass. I'm not sure, maybe you can help me. I'm not sure that we lose anything. And if there's something you feel we lose, perhaps you could articulate that.
You can respond, Mr.
Yeah.
Alabas.
Yeah, I guess it almost sets a precedence that we can't have these conversations with the officer and I don't have it in front of me. What are the two, the health officer and the administrative director? Those are the two that were in there that you're proposing we get out. It seems like it would set a precedence that we don't have interactions with them, but in your average, role as the health board, you do per law. And it would be Article 2, Section 2.24, I believe, of the county charter that says the stuff I've been quoting.
Yeah, and I think my response is defining it as the health department or defining it as the department means we're not restricted to only those two people.
Ms. Kershner, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just reading this and trying to digest it, but I think I've got it figured out. Is the administrative director are you referring to the health department director there? I know we crossed it out in your amendment, but is that who you're talking about there?
Yeah, and that's the position that's currently filled by Erica Lockenbach.
Erica. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this ordinance really is just about, in a health emergency, making sure that the health department communicates with the council. But it does not include the EOC component of any kind of an emergency.
Well, it's that the health department provides information as necessary for the council, for the executive, for the unified command or the EOC to do their job. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ben Ellenboss,
No.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
That passes 6-1 with Councilmember Ellenboss opposed. Now we have the motion to adopt the amended version of the ordinance. So any further discussion on that? Yes, Mr. Browne?
I want to make sure that Mr. Byrd had an opportunity. He wanted to make amendments. So.
Yes, Mr. Byrd.
I move that we edit the document to remove from C2 approved by, so remove supermajority vote so that it leaves it as detailed as approved by the majority vote of the council or the county health board. I thought I'd seen that in 2 spots, but I'm rereading it now. It's just in the one spot it's calling for a supermajority, correct?
Mr. Browne?
Yeah, it's just a one spot.
Mr. Ellenboss?
Oh, was that seconded yet?
No, it was not.
Okay, I'll second it because I got a question.
Okay, and go ahead.
Councilmember Browne, what's the intent of it being a supermajority versus a regular majority?
My intent when I put that in there was simply that, you know, these issues can be emotional and they can be done under high stress situations. So I just thought it was good to have the buffer of a supermajority decision on the council. And this is only just in terms of what is the format and content of the information that's being produced by the health department, which, by the way, I really like what they're doing at the moment. I think the daily reports are very appropriate and have been very calming on the population now that they've come out.
I would agree, definitely. Okay, further discussion on Mr. Byrd's. Yes, Mr. Byrd, go ahead.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I wish we would have seen or had those available in the beginning, because I think that the amount of information coming out on the press conferences and via the reports right now is providing an exceptional amount of clarity into what's happening to everybody, and it has a ton of value for us individually as well as the communities that we serve. So the reason that I would like it removed is because I don't want to get into a place that we are restricting the amount of data that gets out there. So my concern is that it would become restrictive of the transparency that is available, because there isn't enough votes. So because it would require 5 versus 4. And so I want to make sure that we don't get to a place into that more information is better.
Other discussion, Ms. Kershner?
I agree with what Tyler says, but I think that a supermajority actually may ensure that more information is released. In the case of just a simple majority, there could be 4 council members that decide what information should be released to a lesser scale, and that would leave 3 council members out there without the ability to influence that. So I don't know, I guess it could go either way, but it seems like a supermajority would require a greater number of voices to the solution of what this format would look like.
Councilmember Frazee?
Yes, I agree with Councilmember Kershner and also Councilmember Browne, having that just a super majority, it also takes out that, like, if we think about us 2-3 weeks ago, the emotions, I think it balances that out, and yeah, it'll give the public the information they need, not just because of what's going on right here emotionally.
I think
Go ahead, Tyler.
I think those are good points. I will withdraw my motion if Ben is okay with that.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
Okay, we are now on the motion to adopt as amended.
Right. I have one other motion. I move that we remove number D from the document.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler, discussion.
Okay. There's several reasons for this. One is in the deputy executive's email, he attached a copy of an updated version of this based on their recommendation. D had been removed from that version as well. For me, I think that this is generally obscure in language, and so the creation of additional documents could, or the limitation to existing documents, that could be construed as, we can't ask them to create a new email because that would be a new document. In this case, as it relates to something that's entirely unprecedented that we haven't ever been involved in before, we would be limited to what we have had in place in the past or what decisions we've made in the past. And I don't know how we can ever effectively respond as the health board if we can't ask for additional information or additional documents to be created when unprecedented issues such as this one arise. We won't know beforehand what to expect or what we'll be dealing with, and we'll be learning through that process what we need to be able to implement and do, and we need to be able to maintain that flexibility moving forward. And so I don't want to see this get written into code and to remove that, because I think that will cause much greater damage to what we're trying to achieve here than what it is trying to prevent.
Mr. Ellenboss, then Mr. Browne.
Councilmember Browne, what was your intent with D?
So I'm just trying to be sensitive to the fact that in a significant emergency, whether it's a health emergency from a pandemic, or it could be an eruption of Mount Baker, or whatever the case may be, that things are very fluid, they're very high demand, people are working long hours. I wanted to sort of put a bit of guardrails around what we ask the staff to do in addition to what they're currently trying to do to respond to the emergency. So I didn't say no creation of new documents. So for example, if someone said, well, here's copies of all the receipts, here's the shoebox full of receipts, I think it's reasonable to say we need someone to put those in a spreadsheet. But I didn't want to put an unreasonable burden on the health department staff to stop what they're doing, responding to the crisis, to create documentation for us. So that was the logic. It may be flawed, it may not be, but that was the logic.
Other discussion? Mr. Ellenboss.
So what you're saying is, because it says should be avoided and not shall be avoided, if it makes sense and is timely, and then it can still happen.
Exactly. I deliberately avoided the word shall for that purpose.
Yes, it's not the shall avoid necessarily that I'm referring to. It's the should be limited to existing documents. By saying it should be limited to those documents, it's saying that no new documents should be created, or in essence. And from a legal standpoint, I believe should isn't a suggestive should, it's more of a affirmative, it must be, essentially. It's my interpretation of that. And so we can get counsel, or Schroeder's got his hand up. Maybe he has some clarity.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler Schroeder.
Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. I just wanted to kind of bring the reason why the version the executive brought forward, why we struck D or recommended to strike D, and overall it just appeared to be unnecessary. And there is also, if you read it, it could be construed to authorize the health board to direct somebody under the executive's oversight to produce a document under certain circumstances. And at the end of the day, we just weren't quite clear what the drafter intended this provision to do. And so to make the ordinance as concise as we could, it was just recommended to strike it.
Mr. Browne.
Yeah, my intent was to make things easier for the health department and the executive's office. And if I've failed, I won't object to its removal, if that's the request of the executive's office. I was simply trying to put guardrails around what was going to be asked for.
Other discussion on the motion to adopt, or motion to amend, excuse me, striking D. Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Brad Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
That amendment passes 7-0. We are now back to our motion to adopt. Any further discussion on the adoption of the ordinance as amended? Mr. Byrd.
So one question, the number C1, disclose all relevant information. Do we remove relevant? And what I'm wondering is, like, who decides what's relevant to the situation and what's not? So if it relates to the situation, it should be disclosed. If it doesn't relate, then it shouldn't be, minus what's currently prevented by HIPAA, essentially.
Mr. Donovan?
I think the way it's written says all relevant information, which in the opinion of the Emergency Management Division, County Executive, or County Health Board. I would think you could write it if it was in our opinion of the people making the request. It might be more forceful, but yeah, right now it's like it's up to those actors to decide what is relevant, I think is how you might read it.
Yeah. So Todd, are you thinking like if any one of those groups asks for something, then it becomes relevant information, and so it's not necessarily all of them have to agree to it. It's just if we want it and it's not protected, then it is relevant.
Yeah, I think it's just I'm trying to get a sense of how that would be interpreted, and it could be interpreted as the executive, the health. Well, the county health board, we could be the county health board saying what, in our opinion, we think is relevant. Would then the emergency management division or the executive have another opinion? So what we want is to be able to write this saying that the council as health board can ask for all relevant information. So I don't know how to wordsmith it to make it, but I could see some tension in the way it's written right now.
Mr. Browne?
So the intent of the language was that any one of these three parties as a body could make that request, although in the case of the executive, that's singular. But my intent was not to allow individual health board members to bury the health department in requests. But if there was a question about whether what was being asked was reasonable, that was a vote of the health board in the case of the council. So again, I don't want to handicap the health department from doing its job in an emergency. I want them to be responsive, but I want to put some guardrails around that response.
Councilmember Kershner.
I'll make an effort to put some amendment language out there. So I will move that we amend CI to read, disclose all information requested by Emergency Management Division, County Executive, or County Health Board that is required to perform their respective duties effectively.
I have no objection.
That takes out the word relevant and opinion, which are both very subjective words.
Right. I have no objection if you get a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, that's that motion has been seconded. Mr. Byrd?
No, I'll say this will be, I guess, a bit after that one.
Okay, so we have Ms. Kershner's amendment. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Brad Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
That passes unanimously. So we're back to the motion to adopt the amended ordinance. Mr. Byrd?
So what I liked about the document is because I felt like the intent was to create more transparency and more access to information, and that intent wasn't just so that council members could get more access to information, but that information would flow more readily to the community as well. I think what I also hear you saying is that part of your concern has been the number of questions that we've asked in the past and how that may have caused additional workload on the health department staff and team. And I 100% respect that concern. I think that could have been alleviated if we had direct access to the information without having to go through them. And part of the problem was that in asking questions, we couldn't get the answers that we needed to have, and that caused more questions. And in addition to that, we had no direct access to that information on our own. And so I'm wondering if we can add something in here, like a third point, a C3, that would say something to the extent that these parties would all have access to the systems or the information to get the information directly, so we don't have to go through them. For instance, there's absolutely no reason that every council member on here shouldn't have access to the IEP software and be able to see exactly what we're spending funds on, what requests are coming in, what the strategy is, what the plan is, what the reports are that are happening. None of that information is HIPAA protected at all. And so that would alleviate our need to go through the health department or unified command. And it's something that we would end up having to approve in the long run anyway, is all those requests. How do we write that into here so that we have access to those pieces, one, and two, how do we ensure that all of the information and things that are happening are being documented in there so things aren't being left out as well, and that after an event, everything is readily available and can be looked at and addressed, and that we're comprised of the situation moving forward clearly.
Councilmember Browne?
Yeah, I'd have difficulties. I understand what you're asking for, but I'd have difficulty in supporting that because we don't have direct access to any of the other department systems. And the reality is that even with training and good intent, that doesn't stop personally protected information ending up in the IAP system. And that could be, I had to do an emergency response to Mary Smith's house because her whole family's tested positive, or whatever the case would be. I just to provide unrestricted access to those systems, given that the information can be very sensitive, could have legal ramifications, liability issues, I'd be unwilling to do that.
Councilmember Byrd?
So the hard part is on a given day when we're not in an emergency, you're right, we don't have access to those systems, that information ourselves directly. But at the same time, we're not limited to the number of questions we can ask, and there's not a constraint on resources that are being caused either. And so we get the information we need, and we get the reports created that we need created so that we can make the decisions that we need to be able to make. And in this case, if we're trying to take that workload off of those individuals, then it would be easier if we did have access to that information. And if we're looking at something like the IAP software, as council members that are voting on and operating our portion of the government on a day in, day out basis within our scope, we're way more familiar with what is going on and what should be protected and not protected than the 100 or plus volunteers that don't work in government at all that are currently have access to the IAP software specifically. So, I mean, you have all of these people that are working partially, volunteering a day, 1-2 days a week. They have access to that. They can log in, they can see everything. Everyone's credentials are the same. We, as people who are supposed to be making the decisions, we don't have access to that level of information. We have to request it through other sources, and that creates an additional workload and burden. So, go ahead.
I think it's true that when they first turned on the system, everybody who was in there had access, but as they got caught up with the issues, then they started compartmentalizing access to information. So I think there are actually very few people in that operation now that have unrestricted access to everything, and that's the way you do it with any sort of system in any organization. So the other side of it is that we have a public information officer who has two primary functions. One is to gather information that people put forward as a public records request, and the second is to redact information that shouldn't be released to the public. So, and I don't want to give up the second half of that to make the first half easier. I think as long as we get a reasonable response, then that's fine, and we can always challenge why information is redacted, which you can currently do under a public records request anyway.
I think Executive Sadu would like to speak.
Yes, thanks for the discussion. I really appreciate that. I just wanted to share a couple of points here. One is Mr. Byrd just made a perfect case for a commissioner county than a charter county. I think maybe that's where it is leading to. That's how the Whatcom County used to be. That's how Skagit County is you want access to all the information on both sides of the ledger, then we should have a commissioner county, not a charter county. And this is the choice we have made. But that's a perfect argument for that. The second thing is that we have been using the term council and public health board, and council acts as flood control zone district board of supervisors as well. I think we should clarify this for everybody that council, it is decided that council will act as a public health board, act as a flood control zone district. So it means we are always talking about the council. And this about the public health board was clarified by Karen Frakes, a month ago, about the do's and don'ts of that and RCW. I mean, we can argue about that, but it was settled. Now, the thing what I would like to make a point to all of you is your question of getting the information is very legitimate. Your question, when I say your means the whole council's demand for transparency and getting the information is a legitimate thing. And I think that I agree with that. I agreed with that from day one, that the information should be available when council wants it. I think what I disagree with is the way council is trying to thread the needle to get to that point. Now, what happened in the first 2 weeks of emergency and the demand for information not coming through, it has been remedied, and it's not the case anymore. What we are trying to do is to create a change in the code because of a certain personality, because of the health officer. Now, health officer has certain authorities. Health officer is above or unique. Let me put word unique compared to that above. It has a unique authority to make certain decisions. That if that person takes a little longer to make a decision or thinks differently, there is no legislative remedy to that thinking. There could be a different person sitting in that position and can make a different decision, which is the same as council members. 7 council members on the same subject think differently. It doesn't mean that we have to make rules and change the codes to make them think in a different way and regulate their thinking. That's what we are trying to do. We are trying to do, because I'm included in that process. I mean, not me as a person, Satpal, it is totally immaterial. It is the office of the county executive and the office of the council. And what we are trying to do in overreach, just because something happened, the council members didn't like, and now we are trying to do an overreach to fix it, which is not a legitimate fix. There is a regular channel available to the council to talk to the county executive, to pass a resolution and say that this information should be provided or fixed. Problem should be fixed, and problem did get fixed. So I think that from that perspective, that we both, our offices agree on the purpose. What are we trying to do is not even needed. There's a complete existing authority right now, but asking that somehow council should have direct control over the health officer or over the health department head is not proper. That's the division of powers. This is going to impact not because of the current formation of the council. This is not because the current person occupying this office of the county executive. This is all about the relationships of the 2 offices, and it's been laid out very clearly. So I'm still not convinced. I had a discussion with Mr. Browne earlier, and I personally, I have talked to my council, and I think that in my reading, my opinion, we don't need anything. And I don't support that somehow council should try to create a completely different pipeline going past that line of demarcation. That's my opinion.
Okay, just to bring us up back to where we're at, we are still at the motion to adopt. We had some questions on some of the elements, but there was no motion to amend. So that's where we are now. We're still discussing the adoption of the amended motion, or the amended ordinance, excuse me. Mr. Browne.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, at the end of the day, none of the information that we will gain from this is information above and beyond what we would gain through, we could otherwise gain through a public records request. The only thing this really does is set the time frame for doing so. so that particularly in the case of an emergency, we have information in a timely fashion to enable us to do our job.
Mr. Byrd?
Yeah, and I'd like to be kind of, I'll respond to the executive. Let me be pretty clear on my opinion here. What you're telling us is that some reason as elected officials, we don't have right to the same level of information that you have right to as the executive's office. That's what your statement was. This document here specifically is related to getting access to information. It has nothing to do with powers of telling people what they should be doing or anything else. It has to do with whether the information is available and when it is available to us. To say somehow that you have some special privilege that gives you access to information that we shouldn't have access to is a little bit, well, I'm a little miffed about that, to be honest. I don't even know how you read this document and get to that point, quite frankly, or how you think that that would even relate to a commissioner district. The difference between a commissioner district and us is that you get a direct staff, not that you get special information and special privileges to know things that we don't get to know. That's written into the state code. There's very specific things that you're allowed to not disclose. And the majority of information that we've been asking for does not fall into that category. And it frustrates me that you still think that somehow that is the case and that you have that ability and that you don't see the importance for this document. And it really ticks me off, quite frankly. And so if nothing else, it reinforces the reason we should have this document, because we need to state clearly that information is available to every single one of us as council members that we see as necessary to doing our jobs, and that it's available to the community as well, because that hasn't happened until recently, and it's pretty obvious why that's the case.
Mr. Sadu?
Yeah. I appreciate, Mr. Byrd, your level of frustration, but this level of frustration is not about me. I just want you to be very clear. I'm not talking about it that I have certain privilege. I don't have any privilege different than anybody else, okay? I'm talking, if you refer to the charter, and maybe I would suggest that you should read more about the commissioner counties and their modus operandi, and the charter county. There are only 4 or 5 charter counties in whole state. The rest of the state is working on the commissioner counties. And there are different privileges to each office about that. And maybe I would refer to what the charter says, and maybe I can ask Chris Quinn, if you are still online, can you please explain the charter and the division of powers? This is about division of powers. It's not, this is important for me and I'm not trying to give it to the council. It's not about that. This is not about a conspiracy that somehow the executive or the departments are trying to hide information from the council. Please, that's not the intent here. I'm sorry if you get that intent. And maybe Chris, if you could explain the charter.
Real quick, Chair, can you, we don't need to get into this right now. Can we carry on with our vote? I'll call the question.
Okay, that's a better way to do that. Question's been called. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to call the question. It's non-debatable, so we will proceed to the vote. Please call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
No.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Brett Browne,
Yes.
That passes 6-1 with Councilmember Byrd opposed. So we are now going to call the question. So please call the roll to adopt the ordinance as amended.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Red Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes, that passes unanimously. Let's move on to our next item. We have one item for introduction. That is the ordinance. Do we still want to have this item on for introduction since we did clear the emergency ordinance hurdle for this same effort?
Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. Yes, my understanding is the council office, in coordination with the executive's office, had it to get into introduction because we will need to formalize make the emergency permanent anyways. So yes, we should still move forward with introduction.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Okay, so do I have a motion to introduce?
Move to introduce.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Donovan moves, Frazee seconds. Discussion. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Red Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Oops. We are now on to other business from council members. Is there any other business for today's meeting? Mr. Ellenboss.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion here for an emergency ordinance that should be in your email. And I move the ordinance supporting a thoughtful approach to doing business in Whatcom County during the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has required extraordinary measure to protect public health, and whereas Whatcom County has adopted a comprehensive health plan that puts families and children first, and whereas economic hardship has been proven to be a major stressor to the health of families, these hardships have been universally linked to an increase in domestic violence, food insecurity, housing insecurity, declines in mental health, increases in family stress, an increase in suicide, and more. And whereas the citizens of Whatcom County have proven that mitigation factors are effective in slowing the spread of COVID-19 to a manageable level. And whereas mitigation factors include but are not limited to social distancing, mask wearing, frequent hand washing, physical barriers at checkout, mindfulness in the presence of others, keeping high-risk individuals at home, and an increased sense of personal responsibility and awareness in regards to the spread of disease. And whereas Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, Walmart, Costco, and others have been open and successfully implementing mitigation measures to slow the spread of COVID-19 while operating their business and providing goods and services. And whereas government construction projects, including the Birch Bay Berm and the Thornton Road Overpass project, amongst others, are allowed to continue safely. Findings: the negative health effects and possible loss of life from the economic hardships that COVID-19 has created possibly outpace those caused by the virus itself. Learning from our own experience that slowing the spread of COVID-19 does not have to come at the expense of our local businesses, and to avoid the appearance of Whatcom County government picking winners and losers, and striving to provide a framework where everyone is afforded a level playing field. Now, therefore, be it ordained that to further protect the health and well-being of children and families, any business that offers light goods and services to the above-mentioned big box stores, or any construction projects, including residential construction of any kind, that can implement mitigation factors such as the above-mentioned businesses, shall be able to operate during the governor and executive's COVID-19 related emergency declarations. That's my motion.
I guess I would have so many questions, I wouldn't even know where to start. I would start, I guess, with legal. Karen, you have
There's no second yet.
I'll second it for discussion.
okay, thank you.
And
As,
definitely.
as the maker of the motion, I get to speak to it first, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So here's something at the beginning of this. We had a lot of conversation about acting quickly, using examples that we've seen in other areas affected, being thoughtful, and I think the thing that sticks out to me most was what Councilmember, what was his name, Nick Lewis from the Lummi Business Council said. He said we had to have the political will to help our people. And so I'm sure I know what Karen's going to say, but we should have the political will to do the right thing. If I can go to Home Depot and have people reach over me to grab a hammer, you know, your local hardware store can be open, or any mom and pop store. We've chosen these big box stores to be open. Why can't the stores on Main Street be open? You know, we're about a week away from calling a housing emergency in Whatcom County before the COVID emergency came down, and now we've ground to a halt on residential construction. I work in a control room that has 20 or 30 or 40 people in it at a time, and no one's gotten sick. Yet we're telling people that they can't go out and swing their hammer.
We lost you, Ben.
On property that they own, quite frankly. I think it's time, just like, you know, the Growth Management Act, planning needs to be done locally. I think we're the best ones to decide how to open and when things go. Am I back, Barry?
We missed that last part of you. Councilmember Donovan.
Can we hear from Ms. Frakes?
Where'd you lose me?
You were talking
Political
about
will?
resolution.
We lost you, just not the whole thing, just in and out. What was your question, Mr. Donovan?
Can we hear?
Yeah. Bottom line, we need to.
Don't everybody talk at once. That's where we get in trouble. So, okay, Ben, you want to finish?
Yeah, just in summary, I've heard a lot of things, like from Councilmember Browne about, you know, the negative health effects of a struggling economy, and we've all heard that we need to be looking for the lead out of this, and quite frankly, there's things we can do to get out front, just like we could have done early on in the COVID response to get out front. That would have been in front of a state level or a federal level mandate. And so I'm sure I know what a lawyer's going to tell me about this, but the bottom line is that we need to have the political will to do the right thing to help the people in our district. So that's what the discussion should be around.
Well, if you want me to weigh in, I think it's probably clear to everybody, including Mr. Ellenboss, that this is in direct violation of the governor's proclamation. And regardless of political will, you simply don't have the power to do something like this. It's frankly illegal.
I think Mr. Donovan was about to broach the subject of ordinance versus resolution. Was that where you were going to go, Todd? I kind of had that same question.
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
I just want to make it clear that whether this is a resolution or an ordinance, there are problems with it, because you would be directing people basically to disregard the governor's proclamation by supporting a resolution that's worded in this way.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Mr. Ellenboss?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we know what mitigation measures work, and we know what doesn't work. And if we can apply that in a thoughtful way, we can help stop problems that we may see developing into the future, which will protect families and children, like we've adopted in our comprehensive health plan. We don't have to shut everything down in order to stop the spread or slow the spread. We can go about it thoughtfully. And I guess you're saying that it violates the governor's order. However, we wouldn't be the first county to do it. And also, is there a law that says that we can't do this? That we can't, I mean,
we simply don't have the power as a county to supersede the governor's proclamation. And there may be other counties that are attempting to do this. I'm aware of some who have had to withdraw some proclamations that were in direct violation of the order. And I'm not sure what else has been done as far as enforcement, but it is a violation of the governor's proclamation.
Mr. Byrd?
So I'm going to have a couple questions here. The first one is, I don't see, and Karen, this one's going to be for you. If I break this into pieces, I'm going to look at the first piece, and that's going to be Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, Walmart, Costco. If we said that any local business that offers like goods and services to those is allowed to be open, that wouldn't be in contradiction in the concept of, hold on, if they're allowed to be open because of the goods and services they sell fall into the guidelines that the governor has said is allowed to be open. And so as grocery stores and selling groceries, Walmart and Target are allowed to be open. As Lowe's and Home Depot and Target and Walmart and Costco all also sell hardware supplies, that also falls into the governor's proclamation of essential personnel and essential businesses, and they're allowed to be open. It's the same for hardware sales, and the reason hardware sales is allowed to be open. So by saying that any local business that offers the goods and services that those are offering is just basically reinforcing that they're allowed to be open, right? So why is that not the case?
It would allow clothing stores to open. It would allow stores that sell any one of the items that those big box stores sells to open. And if you read the governor's proclamation, there is a reason why those stores are open. They're open because they sell food, they sell construction supplies, and that's very spelled out in the order. So this just opens things up way beyond the governor's proclamation.
Okay. So the second part then would be, so I see what you're saying. It would basically anyone who sells any single product that those one of those stores opens could then, okay. How is it that Birch Bay Berm project or the Thornton Road Overpass project are different in, as it relates? Why are those okay? They're not essential buildings as it relates to operating the COVID response. So,
you know, I don't know the details of those projects, but my guess is that they fall into specific language in the governor's proclamation.
So could we just figure out, is there somebody who decides that? Who decided that those projects were okay to, like, were safe projects to do as it relates to it? And can we figure out what guidance they used or what that rationale was?
Well, I'm assuming those are our public works people that are making those determinations, and I can't speak from them, but I know that they don't operate recklessly. So I'm assuming it's pretty clear that they have the authority to do that. And it's also very clear that some of the things that Mr. Ellenboss's proposed ordinance allows, such as residential construction, is very specifically prohibited in the governor's order.
Yeah, I understand that part. I also understand what Councilmember Ellenboss is getting at. Bellingham has got all of their street projects going again, and we're lining up ours. And I do believe it's a double standard for us to tell people that they can't go work on their projects that require 2 or 3 people when we have 10, 15, or 30 people working on a project for us on site. That I don't think jives very well at the end of the day. How is it, like, what happened with Linden? The Linden has made this kind of a resolution with that. What's the status of that ordinance or resolution that they passed?
I have no idea what the status of that was, but in my opinion, that was also directly in violation of the governor's order. I have the proclamation on my desktop, but I'm sorry, I can't pull up answers as quickly as you're asking questions.
I totally understand. I knew that it was in the same vein, and so that's why I was asking about it as an example. Because I do think I am supportive of that from that context. If we're going to be doing these projects, then the community should be able to as well. It's kind of that philosophy of lead by example, I suppose. And if Linden has gone forward and been able to do that, then it hasn't seen any consequences, then maybe we should take that step as well.
Well, I guess as your attorney, I don't advise you to take steps that are illegal just because you probably won't get caught.
Councilmember Browne.
I think, yeah, Mr. Ellenboss, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I have to concur with Ms. Frakes. And the other thing too is the governor is going to be speaking at 5 o'clock today. My understanding is that he's laying out the path for the state to be reopened. I think it's premature for us to be jumping the gun for that reason alone. And then one of your key data points has been that you operate in a control room with 40 people where no one's gotten sick yet. Well, the reality is, I challenge you to quantify how that's true. There was a recent report out of
with mitigation measures, no one's gotten sick.
Let Mr. Browne finish, please.
There's a recent report out of a homeless shelter in Boston, 350 residents, no one exhibiting symptoms, and 146 tested positive. So, and that's people with more compromised immune systems as a population than I would think the people in your control room.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I guess I would echo Ben's frustration. We all want to get this stuff open back up again. I got a couple of contractors lined up for projects who can't here that they can't do. But I don't know, your definition of political will to propose something that you said you knew what the lawyer was going to say about. I think we have an oath of office that maybe contradicts doing things that we know are illegal. So.
Yes, Mr. Ellenboss.
I wholeheartedly agree, Councilmember Donovan. I do believe we have an oath of office. And I'm not so sure that the governor's orders are following any sort of lawfulness either. And so whose shoulders does it fall on to do the right thing? Ours? His? He's obviously not done it yet. And there's been some very thought in regards to residential construction. There's been some very, you know, I'll just leave it at like this. We're not King County, we're not Snohomish County, we are Whatcom County. And we have data and we have science and we have systems in place and we have mitigation measures that we've implemented. So who better than to help decide when is time than the body that makes the laws for Whatcom County, which is us, to take action. I think it's time we take action.
Any more discussion on this motion? This requires a 5-vote majority. Mr. Byrd?
Ben, I'm supportive of it, especially in the context of, I think that counties doing this will help strengthen the importance of it happening to the governor, right? And so if nothing else, the more counties that are and cities that are taking this kind of action, the more it becomes apparent that we believe it's important to do, and that he's got to decide one way or another. Does he make it, you know, more restrictive and apply to everyone, or does he allow like it to be less restrictive? So again, the rules apply to everyone. A little bit about, I share, based on Karen's interpretation of the store part, I do think that there's some stores that don't necessarily make sense right now. I'm not sure how to get around that portion of it. Do you have any ideas, or was that kind of the intent, was that any business could be open essentially?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Ellenboss.
Yes, my intent was that if you can go to Costco with hundreds of people and buy shorts, why can't you go to Ma and Pa, you know, Foxy Brown's or whatever in Linden, where you might run into 1 or 2 other people in the store and buy a pair of shorts? It seems like it would be a much safer interaction than congregating masses into these big box stores. So yeah, absolutely, my intent was to be able to let I'm just using Foxy Brown's because it's the only clothing store I can think of right now as an example, is yes, if I can go to the co-op, you know, and buy some soil, I should be able to go to Foxy Brown's and using the same mitigation factors that the co-op's using, I should be able to buy my shorts safely. The mitigation factors are the same, whether we're at Costco, whether we're at Foxy Brown's, whether we're at the co-op. They've proven to work. So let's take that thoughtful approach and get some of these small businesses open instead of congregating people into these big box stores. It just doesn't make any sense. And I feel like we're being counterproductive to both the spread of the disease as well as counterproductive to our local businesses and our economy getting moving again.
Councilmember Frazee?
Yeah, Councilmember Ellenboss, I think everyone's frustrated with that, and I think it's the inconsistencies that we're seeing. And but I can't vote for this just because of the, it's illegal. And plus, I think hopefully after the 5 o'clock meeting or press conference from the governor, we can start moving forward. And I think also, everyone in the Unified Command, they're looking at, like what we talked about earlier with Erica, is looking at how we're going to open things up gradually and how we're going to do that in a safe manner. And if we just let all these businesses just, open up now, before we get things in place, like if it's a small store, I haven't been to that store that you're talking about, but is it one person at a time? We need to get systems in place so that, okay, these people stay healthy. And like you said, you're reaching over for a hammer at Home Depot. There is inconsistencies there, and it's not fair Yeah, I think everyone's frustrated with that. But as we move forward, making sure that we can do everything we can before everyone's out at every store, that we have some systems in place so that people are safe and healthy, because we don't want to ramp this up again.
Councilmember Ellenboss.
Yeah, I don't mean to be flippant or whatever here. What is, I guess we talk about it like it's rocket science. We know what mitigation factors need to be put in place. So when we say we need to convene a massive, a bunch of economists to see how we're going to open things up, do we? Or do we know what works because these stores have been doing it for 2 months? I think we know the answer to that. They know what kind of mitigation measures to put in place. Put your duct tape on the floor 6 feet apart. Put up a plexiglass between you and the cash register. Anybody who's gone to the grocery store or gone to, Lowe's or Home Depot will see what works and what doesn't work. It probably doesn't need to be any more formal than that, because quite frankly, I don't think I see a lot of consistency out in the community. We can do this thoughtfully. These people who own these businesses aren't going to want people to get sick in their business. They're going to inherently be safe in what they're doing, because they have way more to lose than a Lowe's or a Home Depot. And quite frankly, they're probably about one rent payment away from losing it anyway. So I think we know the answer to what mitigation measures need to be there. We know the answer to how to do this. Somebody just needs to step forward and lead. And when we look at our data, is it time? I believe in Whatcom County, our time is sooner than other places, because we've done a very good job here.
Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, again, it takes a 5-vote majority on an emergency ordinance. Yes, Ms. Kershner.
I would just like to say that I support Councilmember Ellenboss's frustration with where we are, and just reiterate that this is exactly what I, as a council member, and I believe the rest of you, have been talking about when we say we want plans. And 3 weeks ago we wanted a plan for how we were responding to the emergency, and now we want a plan for how we're responding to getting out of this emergency. And so when we don't get those kind of things coming forward, or any discussion or information, then we end up where we are right now. I'm not interested in passing an ordinance that will put us out of compliance with the law. That would not be the right thing to do. But I think what will be the right thing to do is listening to the governor tonight, and then working aggressively from his comments on getting Whatcom County back up, working and running, so we can protect the people that live here.
Yes, and I agree with everything that Councilmember Kershner just said, and I share Mr. Ellenboss's frustrations. Hopefully, we're going to get some news from the governor and some of these groups that we're tasking to lay out how we reopen from Unified Command with the help from the health department. Hopefully we can get there sooner rather than later, but I can't support something either that goes against law. So anything else from any council members? Mr. Browne.
Sorry, the county clerks just sent me a copy of what we voted on earlier, and there's a little bit of Scrivener's errors in it. So I'm just going to send an amended version back to everybody, which I think captures the intent of what we were trying to do. So just look for your emails now, and you'll see it.
You're still taking.
There's a motion on the floor.
Oh, sorry. Yes. please give Mr. Ellenboss's motion that.
Yeah, okay, I was confused there. I thought you had something that was relevant to his motion, but.
No, I thought you said any other business. That's why.
No, any other discussion?
Oh, okay, fine.
Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Ben Ellenboss,
Why, yes.
Carol Frazee,
No.
Kathy Kershner,
No.
Rudd Brown,
No, sorry, Ben.
Barry Buchanan,
No.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Unfortunately, no.
So that fails 2-5. Mr. Ellenboss?
I'd like to move it as an introductory item for 2 weeks in case the governor doesn't take action.
Second.
Okay, discussion on that. We may modify that. Would I assume that you would modify that as specifics came out of the governor's office, Mr. Ellenboss, or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking we get it on the agenda and it'll belong to the body.
Okay.
Yeah. Introduce it and it could be a placeholder.
Okay, discussion on that motion. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Rudd Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Mr. Byrd?
Do we need the food permit ordinance that was sent out by Dana earlier? Does that didn't get removed? So do we need to take a vote on that? Okay, I'm going to move approval of ordinance number, I don't know, to ordinance to provide permitting relief to food establishments.
Second.
Okay, I remember discussing this, but I do not see it on our agenda.
She sent it via email with Ben's resolution.
Okay, I don't like the way we do this, but I guess that's what we're stuck with. Okay, Councilmember Ellenboss.
Real quick, so did that get moved and seconded?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess the way I read it was there were two choices underneath there, right? I mean, it's not a final ordinance. It was we either take this route or this route, or did I read that wrong?
Mr. Donovan?
Is this an introduction item? Is this meant as an introduction item? Because
I think that might be better. Yeah.
It's not labeled as an emergency ordinance.
Oh, see, I thought, because it was saying, will the executive sign it today, which made me think that it was, because we've gone over it 2 weeks ago too, as well.
I think that was reference to the executive order. Is that correct? Is Dana on the line? That statement about signing today?
I can clarify. This is Kathy Halka with the council office. It looks like from the email, it says, are you interested in signing the executive order?
Yeah. Which was a companion to this. Yes, Mr. Schroeder.
Yeah, I did send an email right away back that, yes, I will sign the executive order. I think the council should have gotten that email as well.
The trouble is, all these pile up right before or during our meeting, and it's very difficult to deal with.
So I will sign it today. If Dana is supposed to send it to me or something, but if you guys want to pass the ordinance, that's perfectly fine with me too.
I don't think we can. It hasn't been introduced. It's just been spoken about as far as I can tell.
That was exactly the reason Dana asked me, would I sign the executive order? And that was the dilemma. Otherwise, it has to be introduced and all this. And that's why I said, yes, I will sign it right away.
My understanding was that Mr. Schroeder put out some logic that we would do the executive order and then follow up with an ordinance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct. And so in Dana's email, she indicates if the executive does sign the executive order, there's no rush to introduce the ordinance today, and it can be added for the introduction on May 5th. But if council wants to introduce it today, that could happen as well.
That's fine.
Okay, that makes sense. I'll go to, I didn't see who was first. I'll go to Mr. Ellenboss, is higher, and then Mr. Browne.
Okay, I guess my thing is that we have been looking at this for the last, I don't know, few weeks, month, and it is sort of relief for our small businesses. And so I guess I don't want to have it hurt somebody worse by having to wait 2 weeks for it to go, or is the health department just not taking action right now on any of this stuff? I wish there was somebody here to answer that, but maybe Schroeder knows.
Tyler Schroeder?
We're going to sign the executive order today.
So it go into effect today.
That's right. So that'll be in place, and then the council can follow up with the introduction of the permanent ordinance as you guys see fit.
Go ahead, Ben. Follow up.
Right, but wasn't there a 3-month option and a 6-month option, and then a forgiveness and just a put off, and the different costs associated with that?
There was in that last policy discussion that council had. That's correct. And I guess.
Okay, so I guess if we put it, what action would you be taking? And if we put it on the agenda, are we leaving it on there with it needing to be amended, or are we going to decide what direction we're going to go now so we can vote on it in 2 weeks? Or do we just make it a emergency ordinance? Seems emergency
We
issue.
decided that 2 weeks ago. We decided which option at the last meeting.
Excuse me, Councilmember Donovan was next.
I just want to make sure I understand the process on here. So the executive is doing the emergency proclamation. So this starts effectively now. We want to introduce that so eventually it can be adopted as an ordinance. Can we introduce it the way we have it here with this 3 months or 6 month thing, or do we have to pick that now? I like just introducing the way that we have it here. We make that choice, or do we need to wait to introduce it? We've actually decided if it's going to be 3 months or 6 months. Maybe there's a question for Dana or for Karen. Like if you're looking at the version that we got in our email during the meeting, the stuff in red where it says 3 or 6 months, a couple of places. Can we leave it? Can we just introduce it like that and then deal with it subsequently?
I think it's fine because it sort of puts two possible ordinances on the table. So it's sort of like introducing two ordinances. Dana may disagree.
Okay. Well, if so, then I'd move to introduce it as the version we received in our email. I don't have the exact time. The Word document.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Kathy seconds.
Point
Mr. Byrd?
There's already a motion on the table.
Was there? Oops.
Yeah, I had already moved it. And Carol had already seconded.
Okay, sorry, let me turn off my mic.
Yes, Tyler.
So for clarity, last time we met, we looked at this, and what we decided was that we were going to go with the option that didn't include, included restaurants, but didn't include grocery stores because they were still able to operate. So that was the direction that we gave them to head for the three options that they gave us. When it came down to time frame, what was decided was that we were going to do 3 months up front with the option to then improve an additional 3 months if this continued. And so we were looking at a rolling 3 month period where it would come back to us for a second approval if we wanted to extend it to 6 months if the need was there. In addition, the feedback from the health department at that time was that they could just hold off on charging these things until the point in time that it got in front of us for a full vote. So with the executive's letter and their understanding of that, and we can basically introduce this for 2 weeks and take a vote on it and be good to go. It shouldn't have an impact on the businesses today.
Okay, so the motion is to introduce the version that we received today in our email. Is that correct, Tyler?
I actually moved to approve it, but I'll, with Carol's permission, I'll change that to move for introduction. And there is Barry, do you need us to read? In the email, there was an ordinance number, AB 2020-189.
Okay, thanks. So Carol, you agree with that change of the motion to introduction? I saw you hold up a 2.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
Brad Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Is there any other business? Mr. Browne, I saw you first.
Yeah, so in your inbox, there is a slight edit exhibit of the ordinance that we passed earlier. I think Ms. Brown Davis has indicated that it doesn't read very well, so I've attempted to edit it. So if you could just look at that. And then my motion is to adopt the edits as put in here, and I'll read those into the record. And this is on Exhibit A for the ordinance related to the Health Department. It's Section C, subsection 1 would read, disclose all information the Emergency Management Division, County Executive, or County Health Board requires to perform their respective duties effectively, as shown on the screen.
Second.
Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think we have to, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have to do a reconsideration on the motion made earlier.
Okay.
And
So
then start the amendment process.
okay, so my motion is to reconsider.
So, Todd seconds. Okay, Councilmember Kershner?
The language here is not the language that I amended. So it might be possible that we don't have to reconsider because maybe it looks like the clerk got the language incorrect.
I will withdraw my motion to allow Ms. Kershner to explain.
So the motion that I made to amend section C1 was disclose all information requested by Emergency Management Division, County Executive, or County Health Board that is required to perform their respective duties effectively.
And if that's the motion that passed, I'm fine with that and with withdrawal.
Yeah, that's the motion that I made that passed. So I'll repeat it again so that it, Dana and Kathy, whoever's taking notes on this can get it. Disclose all information requested by Emergency Management Division, County Executive, or County Health Board that is required to perform their respective duties effectively.
Okay, so it looks to me like the only thing that didn't get transcribed was the word "that" in that first round. Yeah.
Disclose all information requested by. So requested by.
Okay, so if we're going to reconsider, is this, Dana, can you weigh in? This is such a very minor Scribner's error on how we might correct this. Dana? Kathy?
I think Dana's having an issue with audio. I'm in following along, I don't see that there is an error in the wording based on what Councilmember Kershner had discussed as far as her language. What did I miss? Dana says correct. So there's no Scrivener's error, or there's no change that needs to happen because the wording from the previous vote would be fine, I believe. There's no content change, and the language as Councilmember Kershner described works.
Karen, do you have an opinion on that? There was one word that wasn't correct. You're muted. You're muted, Karen.
No, I agree with Kathy. I think it's fine. I don't think you need to do anything further.
Okay, so no action is required.
Right.
So, Mr. Donovan.
We do have one more item from executive session. I can read that in as a motion if you want me to.
So first off, procedural point of order.
Yeah.
I withdraw my motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Okay, Chairperson of the Council, I hereby move to approve defense and indemnification of Bill Elfo, Wendy Jones, Stuart Andrews, Adam Miller, Cheryl Cardinal, Matt Turner, Jason McDonald, Matthew Charian, Time Kiley, Jeffrey Hindeman, Violet Ignashova, Mariah Browne, and Joshua Farmer named in Cooper as a personal representative of the estate of Paula Jones et al. Versus Whatcom County et al., Whatcom Superior Court case number 20-2-00581-37.
We have a second.
Second.
Mr. Browne seconds. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Red Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kershner,
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Anything else under other items? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Good job, Barry.